late winter's chill hung in the air over the tiny hamlet of Willowbrook, where gnarled willows lined the narrow dirt roads and the ancient stones of the Whispering Willow Temple crouched among snow. Dusted pines. For months now, talk of restless spirits and phantom sightings had spread like wildfire, stoked by the old rumor-monger Mabel Crane, whose hawkish eyes missed nothing. On this particular night, the wind howled louder than usual, rattling shutters and sending skeletal branches tapping against frosted window panes. Inside the modest Harper household, Lena Harper lay shivering beneath a threadbare quilt. Her parents, Robert and Marianne Harper, sat by the hearth, wrapped in woolen shawls, their faces pale and drawn. Flames flickered in the hearth, casting dancing shadows that seemed to grow and shrink with every gust of wind. Robert, a sturdy man hardened by years tending the temple's orchard, leaned forward, his voice low. "Marianne, you heard that, didn't you?" he whispered, glancing at the window. "Sounds like someone." "No," something cried out under the old yew tree. Marianne Harper drew her shawl tighter. "I heard it too." A blood-curdling shriek, "Robert! The villagers are convinced the temple is cursed, that Brother Elias is hiding something inside." Her voice quavered as she met her husband's dark eyes. "I don't like it. If only we had seen our daughter would be all right. She's barely asleep." Lena, 17, stirred under her quilt. Though she had tried to feign sleep, the terror in her parents' voices tugged her consciousness upward. She rose slowly, slipping from bed and pressing a cold foot to the floor. Tiptoeing toward her window, she saw pale moonlight cutting through drifting snowflakes. At the edge of the orchard, a solitary figure had appeared, a monk in threadbare robes, leaning on a long staff, his gaunt form half shrouded by swirling fog. A subtle warmth emanated from him, though snowflakes melted the instant they touched his faded brown robe. Lena gasped, stumbling back as a sudden crack echoed, like ice splitting. The monk raised a slender hand as though to ward off unseen eyes, then vanished in one slow, deliberate step into the temple grounds. Lena's heart pounded. She pressed her palm to her chest, listening to the steady thrum of fear. "Father, Mother," she whispered, voice trembling. Her parents froze as though they had felt her presence without seeing her yet. Marianne turned and saw Lena standing at the doorway, eyes wide. "Lena, what are you doing up?" Marianne hurried across the room, pulling Lena into a warm embrace. "It's late. Go back to bed." Lena shook her head. "I saw Brother Elias coming from the temple. He looked so pale, almost transparent." She swallowed hard. "And I heard that wail. Do you think it's the spirits again?" Robert's face darkened at the mention. "Ignore the old superstitions. Brother Elias has cared for this temple and our people for decades. He would not bring harm upon us." He paused, then added with a sigh, "But these rumors do not die easily. The villagers are frightened." Outside, a pack of stray dogs began to bark, their voices rising in an eerie chorus. From the corner of Lena's eye, she thought she saw a pair of glowing red eyes reflecting in the snow beyond the window. A scream echoed from a neighbor's home down the lane as their livestock spooked. Lena jumped at every sound, her pulse drumming in her ears. Meanwhile, at the crumbling edge of Whispering Willow Temple, Brother Elias pressed his cold right hand against a carved stone pillar, leaning heavily on his staff. The old monk's hip bore the scar of a battle long past, and tonight it throbbed with fresh agony racked by the frigid wind. His emerald green eyes narrowed as he listened for any sign of danger. It had been nearly a year since Duke Reed's men had attacked the temple's orchard, mistaking it for a rebel hideout. Brother Elias had tended both the wounded and the earth, nursing aching spirits into dawn, yet nightmares still haunted him. He smelled smoke on the wind, an omen he had grown to fear. "Elias," rasped a voice behind him. He turned slowly to see Marcus Reed, a tall, broad-shouldered figure wrapped in a heavy cloak, his once bright blue uniform now travel-worn. Marcus's steel-gray eyes reflected moonlight as he approached. His return, unexpected after 2 years stationed beyond the northern passes, sent a tremor through the monk's heart. "You should not be walking in this storm," Marcus said, helping Elias steady himself. He moved with the grace of a soldier accustomed to danger. "You know how these villagers are. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. They'll think the temple is being desecrated by dark forces." Brother Elias tested his weight on both feet, then gingerly shifted it back to his war-ravaged hip. "Marcus, it is good to see you. The cold bites deeper than any sword." He placed a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. "But I must clear this. Whatever spirit roams tonight, it is tied to recent horrors. The orchard attack was no accident, but orchestrated by someone who wishes me gone. Now they whisper that I consort with demons." Marcus frowned. "Who among them would dare? You've healed more souls than any priest in this county." He paused, glancing at the crooked walnut trees, their boughs heavy with snow. Father Thomas said he sensed something twisted in the wind. "He sent me to make sure you were safe." He bent closer, voice dropping. "There's talk that the village council wants to seize temple lands. They feed on fear, Elias. They will stop at nothing." Brother Elias nodded, jaw clenched. He lifted his staff and tapped the ground twice, a ritual that soothed his aching joints. "We must stand firm. Tonight, I will return to the sanctuary, light the candles, and pray for protection. If these shadows persist, we will uncover their source." He began to hobble toward the temple's heavy oak doors. Inside the temple's dimly lit sanctuary, rows of flickering candles cast a warm glow on an altar strewn with withered lilies. Brother Elias hesitated at the threshold, hand trembling as he gripped a tarnished bronze censer. The scent of frankincense mixed with the chilling odor of damp stone. He lifted the censer, swinging it gently. The embers within glowed and sparked, illuminating a strange symbol etched into the altar's edge, a twisted tree with downward roots that pulsed like a heartbeat. Only he and Father Thomas knew of its true meaning, an ancient sigil, conjured to bind malevolent forces. Elias shivered as he traced the carving with his fingertip. He could not remember who had first revealed it to him, only that it had saved the temple from ruin once before. Suddenly, a faint scraping echoed from the darkness to his left. Elias paused, holding his breath. The temple's tall windows, covered in frost, refracted moonlight in ghostly patterns across the stone floor. In the stillness, Brother Elias knelt and began to chant softly, words older than any living soul in Willowbrook. As he spoke, the candles flickered, their flames wavering as though buffeted by an unseen wind. He opened his eyes to see a dark shape shifting behind the pews, a hunched figure draped in a tattered cloak, its face obscured. Elias's heart seized. He grasped his rosary, beads rattling between gnarled fingers. "Who's there?" he called, voice echoing off vaulted ceilings. The figure did not answer. It drifted nearer, silent as a shadow. Elias rose slowly, hand pressed to his hip scar where a phantom pain radiated like wildfire. He stepped forward, voice firm despite quivering limbs, "Leave this holy place. Speak your purpose, wretch, or depart and trouble us no more." The figure's head tilted, revealing a pair of eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. Without warning, it vanished, leaving behind only a faint echo of laughter that slithered through the temple like a serpent. Elias's knees buckled, and he sank to one knee, clutching his chest as pain burned through him. Flames flickered violently, then steadied. He blinked, forcing himself to stand. "This is only the beginning," he muttered, voice heavy with dread. Meanwhile, outside the Harper home, Lena Harper sat at her narrow desk by the window, sketching the temple silhouette against a blood-red sky. When her father called her name to eat a hurried breakfast, she tore her eyes away from the drawing. In the flickering lamplight, she noticed a small slip of parchment cinched by a crimson ribbon. Placing it inside her bodice, she slipped downstairs where her mother had laid out a simple repast of porridge and tea. Lena's mind raced, for she recognized the symbol on the ribbon, the same twisted tree her father had told her was an old ward against darkness. "Lena," Marianne whispered, setting a bowl of steaming oats before her. "Eat quickly. You must fetch more firewood. There's talk that winter will last longer this year." She eyed her daughter's sketch tablet with concern. "You draw too much, my child. Best keep your mind on more practical things." Lena nodded, her gaze drifting to the snow-covered fields beyond the window. As she ate, her thoughts shifted to Marcus Reed's unexpected return. He had been her childhood friend, brave, loyal, with eyes as bright as the summer sky. He had promised to return before the last thaw, yet news of skirmishes along the northern frontier and the temple's troubles had delayed him. Every time she heard a distant echo of hooves, her heart clenched. She had scribbled his name in flowing script across her journal's pages, eyes tracing the letters as if they were a lifeline. At dawn, Lena bundled in her woolen cloak and trod across slippery planks to the woodpile. She lifted a heavy log, balancing it against her shoulder, and made her way to the yard. The snow crunched beneath her boots. As she chopped smaller branches with a copper-bladed axe, she thought of Brother Elias's pale face, of Marcus's promise, and of the ominous mark she had seen in the temple. The air felt charged, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, a distant whistle split the cold air. Lena froze, heart hammering. It was a signal, a coded tune known to none but the temple monks and certain loyal friends of Brother Elias. She dropped her axe, abandoning the woodpile, and raced toward the temple path, footprints disappearing in fresh snow. The wind whipped at her cloak as she reached the sandstone steps, where she found Marcus Reed standing beneath a flickering lantern. His face was grim, eyes hollow with worry. "Lena," he said, voice roughened by travel. He handed her a sealed letter bearing the Harper family crest. "Your father instructed me to deliver this. It's from Brother Elias. He needs our help more than ever." Lena's fingers trembled as she accepted the letter, the paper stiff from cold. She glanced toward the temple doors, expecting to see the monk, but Brother Elias was nowhere in sight. Marcus stepped forward, lowering his voice, "I came as soon as I heard. The villagers believe dark forces have taken hold, others think the temple's been cursed. I don't want to leave you here alone." His words felt like both a shield and a blade to Lena, awakening fear and longing all at once. Swallowing hard, Lena nodded. "Come inside. Father is at the orchard, they're sorting through the destruction from last night. Mother's tending to the animals. We'll find Elias and see what needs to be done." She tucked the letter into her pocket as they hurried through the temple gates, the winter sun cresting above the pines. Behind them, the hamlet of Willowbrook stirred. Windows cracked open as villagers peered out, eyes widening at Marcus's uniform, at the two figures moving purposefully toward the looming arches of the temple. Even Mabel Crane, perched on her front stoop sipping bitter tea, watched with a triumphant curl of her lip, certain that news of dark tidings would add to her arsenal of gossip. Little did they know that the real darkness, far more sinister than mere rumor, was already creeping closer, weaving its web of fear and testing the bonds of faith, friendship, and love. Inside the cool sanctuary, Lena and Marcus found the candles extinguished, the silence heavy with unspoken threats. A single dog-eared scroll lay atop the altar, its edges singed. Lena picked it up, recognizing Elias's careful script, "Beware the blackened blossom. Protect the ones you love." She felt a chill deep in her bones as she read the warning, realizing that their struggle had only just begun. Outside, the wind sighed through the willows, as though whispering a warning. Shadows gather around Willowbrook, and only those willing to face the darkest secrets both within the earth and inside their own hearts could stand against the coming storm. The letter from Brother Elias trembled in Lena's fingers as she stood before the altar's flickering embers. Marcus Reed's gaze remained fixed on her, face taut with resolve. Outside, the wind moaned through stained glass windows, carrying a bitter scent of pine and what might have been, if one believed such things, an undercurrent of decay. Lena slid the parchment into her coat pocket, and with a determined nod, opened her mouth. "We should head to the orchard," she said, voice low. "Father said he found strange footprints in the snow, and then, the vines were snapped, as if something thrived underground." She looked at Marcus, whose jaw clicked as he stepped closer. "My parents worry for Brother Elias. If he sent this letter, there is something urgent, something they cannot face alone. Marcus clasped Lena's shoulder gently. Then we go together. I pledge to protect you. If this danger is real, we'll face it side by side. He offered a reassuring smile, though it wavered under the weight of his own memories. The night his regiment was ambushed beyond Raven's Pass, the flash of steel in moonlight, the anguish of a comrade's final breath. Tonight, he would not let that specter haunt Lena. Leaving the sanctuary behind, they passed beneath a heavy wooden lintel carved with ancient runes, gifts from Elias's mentor, said to guard the faithful. Marcus's gloved hand brushed against its cold surface, and Lena caught a faint pulse, as though the runes themselves breathed. The two hurried down the temple steps, the crunch of fresh snow muffled by their boots. At the edge of the orchard, a pale half-moon cast long, skeletal shadows across broken branches. The apple trees, proud and gnarled, stood like sentinels, their bare limbs reaching toward the sky. Twice now, the orchard had been ravaged, first by human hands when raiders conflated crops with rebel hideouts, then by something far more insidious, uprooting saplings and leaving oval-shaped indentations in the frozen earth. Between two toppled trunks lay a cluster of footprints smaller than a man's, too wide for a woman's, and bearing 3 elongated digits. Lena knelt, tracing one print with a trembling fingertip. Something had moved here, and it had not been a simple animal. It's not a wolf or a fox, Marcus murmured, crouching beside her. He knelt, rubs the rim of his gauntlet finger over the snow. These are deformities. Look how they splay apart. Like a claw from some twisted thing, almost demonic. He stood, voice taut. Have you ever seen anything like this, Elias? Lena shook her head, rising. No. But I remember what Brother Elias wrote, beware the blackened blossom. Could it be tied to that? She lifted her gaze toward the shattered crate of wooden barrels where cider press once stood. The yellowed boards lay splintered, as though some creature had burst through. A harsh gust swept the orchard, rattling the branches overhead. Snow fell in a swirling dance around them, and when they blinked, the footprints below had been partially obscured, nature's attempt to erase evidence. Lena clenched her fist. We shouldn't linger. Follow these tracks back to the temple. Maybe Elias has left more clues near the old well. Together, they traced the prints through tangled undergrowth and churned mud, until they reached a stone well half hidden behind brambles. Its mossy rim stood out like a sentinel of age-old secrets. Marcus fetched a lantern from his satchel, the flame sputtered and then steadied as he crouched by the well's edge. Lena peered into the darkness, where water had frozen into jagged stalactites. Look, she whispered, pointing to the inside wall. Etched into the damp stone was a sigil, a withered blossom with petals blackened, roots coiling downward. It matched the symbol on Elias's altar. Lena's breath stilled, the sigil seemed to pulse with a quiet malevolence, as if it were alive. Marcus ran a finger over the marking. Brother Elias warned of this. They must have carved it. But why the orchard well? Is it a ritual site? He rose, facing Lena. We need to show this to him. He heft his lantern higher, illuminating a rusted bucket that hung from a frayed rope. Lena knelt, plucking at the rope until the bucket's weight gave way, and she lowered it into the well. When it resurfaced, its metal sides were smeared with dark soil and something like old blood too dark to be simply earth. Lena recoiled. This is worse than I imagined. Before Marcus could reply, a sudden whistle pierced the night air, a shrill, staccato note that froze them in place. Lena recognized it, Elias's signal. They darted from the well, racing down a narrowing path lined with rough-hewn stone fences that bordered the orchard. The whistle came again, closer this time, an invitation or a warning. Lena's heart hammered as she reached the fork where a narrow creek trickled beneath a wooden footbridge. Marcus paused, hand on his sword's hilt. He dipped his lantern to the ground, casting shifting shadows across the fence. Do you hear that? Lena whispered. Faintly, under the wind, was the sound of distant chanting, a guttural, rasping cadence that seemed to seep from the forest's depths. It twisted through the branches like a snake, striking fear into her bones. Elias is close. They crossed the creek swiftly, following the echoing whistle up a gentle incline. At the hill's crest, the Whispering Willow Temple loomed once more, its silhouette framed by an ancient willow whose long, spindly limbs scratched the sky. Beneath it, standing guard at the temple's side, was Brother Elias, staff in hand, eyes blazing with urgency. Lena. Marcus. He called, his voice ragged. He beckoned them toward the temple vestibule, where faint torchlight revealed a circle of faintly glowing runes carved into the flagstones. Around the circle lay scattered petals of a blackened blossom like spilled ink on white marble. Elias's robes were stained with dirt and crimson flecks. You freed the bucket, did you see the mark? He panted, leaning on his staff. They have performed the first part of the ritual. Tonight, they will unleash something beyond our worst fears. Marcus knelt beside Elias, testing his pulse, then rose. Brothers of the temple, once thought long gone, have returned to this place. They seek vengeance, Elias, vengeance for a betrayal centuries past. They believe the temple's sanctity was tainted when our ancestors bound them here. They draw darkness from the blackened blossom to tear the veil between life and death. Elias's emerald eyes gleamed with grim determination. We must stop them before they complete the ritual beneath the ancient willow. That is where the energy converges strongest, where earth and spirit entwine. If they succeed, no barrier will remain between our world and the veiled realm. Then horrors will pour out, and all Willowbrook will become a wasteland of sorrow. Lena swallowed, looking at the circle of runes. What can we do? I'm no warrior. Father's orchard, my mother's prayers. I do not have the knowledge to face such curses. She felt Marcus's strong hand clasp her shoulder, grounding her. Marcus offered a crooked smile. Knowledge can be found, but we have little time before the hour of midnight. Elias, what must happen to disrupt the ritual? Elias rose, stepping inside the temple, and motioned for them to follow. As the heavy doors closed behind them, candles flickered to life along the nave. Fresh water from a carved silver basin was poured into a shallow bowl. Beneath it lay a parchment scroll inscribed with invocations known only to Elias. He seized the bowl. To thwart the ritual, we must reclaim the blackened blossom at its source. It grows in the crypt of whispers, deep in the catacombs beneath the temple. He shivered, as if recoiling from the very idea. The catacombs were sealed years ago to protect the wicked spirit sealed within. But I fear the seals have weakened. Lena's breath hitched. The crypt of whispers where old Mother Althea was interred. Legend held that Althea, accused of sorcery in the Age of Shadows, had cursed her accusers with her dying breath. Her tomb was barred by iron gates and wards, for none dared risk her lingering malice. No one goes there. It has been sealed since the plague. Elias's expression was resolute. We have no choice. The blossom sprouts at the heart of her tomb. Only by uprooting it can we deny the conspirators their power. But first, the wards must be reforged to seal Althea's spirit once more. He held out a small iron key adorned with a twisted rose, the petals curling into thorny barbs. This unlocks the gate to the inner crypt. Marcus, I need you to stand guard. Lena, will you steady my hand as I recite the invocation to renew the wards? Lena's heart pounded. Nightmarish images of skeletal figures crawling from the shadows filled her mind. Yet when she gazed at Elias's pleading eyes, she knew she could not refuse. Yes, Brother Elias. I will help. She steadied the bowl as he leaned over, lips mouthing ancient words in a tongue she could not comprehend. Sparks of blue-green energy drifted from his lips into the water, causing ripples that danced with violet hues. The runes lining the basin glowed, and Lena felt warmth seep into her fingertips, magic she had never known she possessed. Above ground, the storm unleashed its fury, ice-laden branches snapped, snow slammed against stained glass windows, and the old willow's limbs writhed in the gusts. Wind rattled the lantern in Marcus's hand as he paced the temple courtyard, every sense alert. He scanned the tree-line, sure that enemies lay hidden in the swirling veil of night. Without a flintlock or blade polished, his hands tightened around the hilt of his long sword, steel that had drank blood on distant battlefields. He would not fail Lena, Elias, or the villagers. Below, within the catacombs, Brother Elias and Lena knelt before an iron gate carved with runic seals. The gate's surface was cold to the touch, veins of rust tracing ancient patterns. Lena trembled as she inserted the twisted rose key into a notch shaped like a bleeding heart. With a groan of strained metal, the gate swung open, revealing a winding staircase that led into suffocating darkness. Faint luminescence glowed from moss-covered walls, as if faintly touched by the moon. Lena's gut churned, she could feel eyes upon them, ancient and watchful. Elias whispered, voice taut, stay close. They stepped inside, lantern in Lena's hands illuminating slick stairs. As they descended, The earthy scent of damp stone, mold, and decay filled their lungs. The musty air prickled the back of Lena's neck. She imagined unseen horrors slithering in the shadows, skeletal hands scraping along crypt walls, anguished whispers billowing like smoke from sealed graves. Every footstep sent brittle echoes through narrow corridors, a staccato rhythm of fear. Finally, they reached a chamber illuminated by phosphorescent fungi clinging to jagged rocks. In its center lay a low, coffin-like tomb of black marble, rimmed with tarnished silver. The lid bore a carved relief of Old Mother Althea, a gaunt woman with hollow eyes, hair like writhing serpents, and a mouth frozen in a silent scream. Lena's breath caught. At the tomb's foot grew a single black blossom, petals charred and crisp as if forged from shadow. Its stem twisted upward, roots burrowing like tiny serpents into the marble. Elias sucked in a breath, kneeling beside the tomb. He held a dagger tipped with silver and inscribed with holy runes. This blossom has fed on Althea's lingering rage. Pluck it, and her memory cannot empower the ritual above. He pointed at the blossom stem, where brittle thorns curled like claws. Lena knelt opposite him, trembling, and reached for the blossom, using a scrap of cloth to avoid the thorns. Just as her fingers closed around the stem, a low growl reverberated through the chamber, an otherworldly timbre that echoed through the stone. Lena's hand froze, her knuckles paling. Elias pressed his staff firmly against her back. Quickly, he hissed. Lena yanked upward, and the blossom released with a snap that sounded like a bone breaking. As she withdrew it, a wave of chilling energy pulsed outward, causing the lantern's flame above to flicker violently. From the shadows behind the tomb, a shape lurched, a figure shrouded in darkness, its form blurred and shifting. Long, bony fingers emerged from tattered sleeves, reaching toward the blossom. Lena stumbled backward, the black flower clenched in her fist. The figure lurched again, stepping into the lantern's glow, an emaciated corpse-like visage with hollow eye sockets glowing red. Rotting skin hung in strips, its mouth opened in a silent wail. Althea's spirit, woken by their intrusion, glared at them with unearthly fury. Lena's heart thundered as the apparition advanced, voice hoarse but resonant. "You dare steal my bloom. You desecrate my tomb. Face my wrath." Runes along the tomb's lid began to glow with fiery orange light. Lena clutched the blossom close to her chest. She felt warmth radiate from her palm, as though her life force resisted Althea's chill. Brother Elias sprang forward, casting his staff down and brandishing his dagger. He chanted in the ancient tongue, words rolling like thunder, forging a shield of runic energy between them. Lena joined her voice to his, though she barely understood the meanings, feeling a surge of heat flood her limbs. The apparition recoiled, shrieking, as Elias's ward flared. Below ground, the storm's fury seemed to intensify. Thunder rolled through the earth like a beast in chains, rattling every stone in the crypt. Above, Marcus pressed his ear to the ground, hearing the echo of Elias's chant. His mind raced. If Althea's spirit emerged, they would all face a darkness beyond imagination. Inside the ward, Elias and Lena felt the tumbling friction of magic and malice. The specter's claws scraped against the runic barrier. Lena clutched the blossom, now shimmering faintly, its petals seeming to absorb the ward's glow. She realized then that the blossom's energy could break Althea's hold. Summoning courage she did not know she possessed, Lena pressed her palm against the blossom's center, infusing it with the invocation's warmth. A searing beam of emerald green light shot from the blossom, piercing Althea's form. The specter wailed as violet sparks danced along its skeletal frame. The runes on the tomb ignited in brilliance, and with one final rending shriek, Althea's apparition dissolved into motes of luminescent dust, snuffed out by the ward's power. Elias sank to his knees, exhausted, as the tomb's runes dimmed. The blossom, now crumbled to ash in Lena's hand, scattered black powder across the marble. Lena felt sweat gather despite the crypt's chill. Elias touched her shoulder gently. "You did it, child. You saved us all from a fate worse than any we could imagine." Lena exhaled, shoulders trembling. The air in the chamber seemed lighter, as though a storm had passed. Elias rose slowly, summoning the key once more to close Althea's tomb. He muttered a final incantation, and the coffin lid slid shut with a resounding click, sealing the crypt. As the iron gate locked itself, Lena placed her palm on the metal, feeling the tremor of relief that reverberated through the temple's foundation. High above, the storm's cry faded, leaving only a hush that seemed to blanket Willowbrook in fragile calm. Outside, Marcus Reed emerged from the shadows and raced down the steps into the crypt's entrance. He rushed to Elias and Lena's side, face etched with both relief and concern. "Are you both all right?" he panted, voice cracking. Lena nodded, though tears clung to her lashes. Elias forgave the pair with a tremulous smile. "Thanks to your bravery, the wards hold for now. But the conspiracy is far from over. Those who called on Althea's spirit will not be deterred easily." He gripped Marcus's shoulder. "Gather the villagers. We must reinforce the temple seals and prepare for a confrontation. Evil stirs in the hearts of men as much as it does in the shadows." Lena and Marcus exchanged a look, her blue eyes fierce with newfound confidence, his steel-gray eyes softening with pride. Together, the three ascended the winding steps, leaving behind the tomb of old Mother Althea. As they emerged into the courtyard, the first faint glow of dawn colored the horizon. Mossy steps glistened with thawing frost, and above them, the ancient willow's limbs had stilled. Still clutching the ash of the blackened blossom, Lena turned to the east, where pale sunlight kissed the tips of snow-draped pines. She inhaled deeply, sensing that though the ritual had been thwarted, darker challenges lay ahead. Marcus wrapped an arm around her, and Elias placed a meteor-tinged hand on her head in benediction. In that moment, as the fragile light crept across whispering willows, Lena Harper felt the full weight of her destiny tied inexorably to the temple, to Brother Elias, and to Marcus Reed. No longer a simple village girl, she bore a spark of power that could shatter curses or awaken deeper darkness. And as the wind settled, forging ice into jeweled patterns across the land, she knew that the battle for Willowbrook's soul was just beginning. For the first time in many nights, the halls of Whispering Willow Temple felt quiet, almost calm. but beneath the surface, tension rippled through the ancient stone corridors. As dawn's pale light filtered through frosted windows, Lena Harper stood in the temple courtyard, watching her breath fog in the cold morning air. Her legs ached from crawling through the catacombs, and her palms still bore faint stains of dark ash. She pressed her fingertips together, recalling the moment the blackened blossom crumbled in her hand, how that single act had broken Althea's ancient ritual and driven her shade back into the grave. Yet Lena sensed that the danger was far from over. Marcus Reed approached from the east archway, his uniform dusted with frost and his eyes shadowed by worry. "You rest here with Brother Elias," he said quietly, nodding toward the sanctuary doors. "I'll gather what men I can from the village and secure the perimeter. There may be more of them lurking in the shadows." He reached out and gently touched Lena's arm. "You did well, Lena. We'll need to be vigilant." Rumors spread faster than magic. Lena offered a grateful smile, though her heart remained heavy. She remembered Elias's warning that conspirators would not give up easily. Someone among them had hatred deep enough to resurrect a centuries-old curse. Inside the sanctuary, Brother Elias paced between the pews, muttering half-formed prayers. The flickering candles illuminated the carved pew ends figures of saints and angels whose visages seemed to watch Elias's every move. Lena entered, drawing closer to the worn wooden altar. She half expected to see Elias's aged hands clutch some hidden tome, but instead he stood holding an oaken staff carved with the same twisted rose motif that crowned the key she had used. The staff's emerald gem pulsed faintly, a living ember of faith and power. Elias looked up as Lena approached, his weary eyes brightening. "Ah, Rebecca," he said, using the name Lena had chosen for herself in her vows. "You should rest, not strain yourself." He gestured toward a bench of polished oak. "Yet, there is much to discuss." Lena crossed the floor and sat, glancing at the open sanctuary doors through which Marcus had disappeared. Frost still clung to the threshold as if lingering doubts dripped from the night's victory. Elias sat beside her, pressing a hand knotted with old scars against her shoulder. "We must guard the temple's ancient scrolls," he said steadily. "Last night's ritual relied on knowledge from forgotten volumes. If the conspirators retrieve more dark lore, they will attempt to break deeper seals." He motioned toward a locked cabinet carved into the wall behind the altar. "Within is the Tome of Ashen Shadows, a compendium of spells recorded by our order's founders to bind malevolent spirits. Until now, it remained undisturbed. But if moved or misused, it could become a tool for unthinkable horrors." Lena swallowed hard, recalling how easily Althea's spirit had been summoned from her crypt. "How can we ensure it remains safe?" she asked. Elias's gaze darkened. "The key to its protection lies not just in wards and runes, but in people. We must rally those with true faith, whose hearts are untainted by fear and greed." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "I believe the temple's caretaker, Mistress Orally, still honors the ancient oaths. Seek her out, she has guided many souls through darkness. But beware, others claim loyalty while plotting treachery." His eyes lingered on Lena's, and she realized he meant someone far closer than she had guessed, perhaps a village elder or someone she had trusted entirely. Outside, a cold wind rattled the stained glass windows, making the depictions of angels and dragons waver into ghostly shadows on the cold stone floor. Lena stood, brushing invisible dust from her skirts. "I will find Mistress Aurelie," she vowed, determination kindling within. "I want to help protect the tome. And I want to understand this staff's power, why it flickers when I'm near." Elias nodded gravely. "Fear not. The staff responds to faith, not simply prayers, but the truth in a person's heart. It recognizes sincerity and will guide you when you face what lies beneath our world's fragile veil." He paused, then added, "But tonight, we will need more than faith. We will need cunning. The conspirators have eyes in every council meeting, and their reach extends even into the temple's inner court." By midday, Lena, wrapped in her woolen cloak, made her way toward the caretaker's cottage at the forest's edge. The path wound through tangled yews and willows whose boughs brushed the snow-laden ground. Even in daylight, an uneasy hush infused the air, the kind that settled before a brewing storm. Mistress Aurelie's cottage stood half-concealed beneath a tangle of evergreen vines, its roof canted beneath a heavy blanket of snow. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, carrying a faint scent of lavender and rosemary. Lena knocked once, twice, then pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. Warmth enveloped her as flames danced in a hearth where a cauldron simmered with herbal broth. Walls lined with shelves of jars and scrolls testified to Aurelie's many talents: healing, divination, and arcane lore. A woman of slender frame and silver-streaked hair looked up from her weaving loom. Her eyes, though lined with age, shone bright as polished amber. "Rebecca," she greeted, her voice soft but commanding. "You come seeking guidance." She placed her spindle aside and rose to stand before Lena, folding her hands beneath the folds of her deep green robes embroidered with ivy leaves. Lena bowed slightly. "Mistress Aurelie, Brother Elias sent me. The conspiracy beneath the stars has broken a ward. The blossom of shadow was disturbed. We fear for the safety of the tome of ashen shadows." Aurelie's brows knitted. "I sensed unrest within the weave of fate last night. The ancient wards flickered, and I drew my scrying lantern but saw only half-truths. Yet the threads of betrayal ran deeper than I dared imagine." She beckoned Lena closer, and Lena felt a sudden warmth at Aurelie's touch. "The tome is hidden within the reliquary of luminous verse, until last night sealed by runes only I and Elias remember. But if the conspirators have infiltrators here, they might learn the location soon. You must bring the tome here, to my cottage, before dusk. I will bind it with warding sigils drawn from moonrise scripture. No mortal or fiend may break those seals." Lena's eyes widened. "But my parents, what of the temple?" "Marcus and Elias remain to guard its gates." Aurelie studied her intently. "The temple must stand, but here, I can reinforce the tome's protection. You have proven your courage, no simple girl, but a catalyst of power many fear and yet can scarcely understand. Take the staff with you, its light can guide you through hidden passages alive with old magic. She gestured to a narrow alcove where more scrolls spilled across a low table. Here, take this map of the temples under Croft. There is a hidden door beneath the choir stairs that will lead you back to the cottage, if you choose the moonlit path. Lena nodded, slipping the map into her coat. She reached for the oaken staff, holding it in her palms. She felt a hum, as though the staff recognized Mistress Aurelie's presence. Outside, a distant peal of thunder echoed from the north. Lena's pulse quickened. "I will do as you ask," she said with resolve. "I'll bring the tome before nightfall." Aurelie offered her a small leather satchel. Inside, you will find consecrated herbs, foxglove root to mask your scent, and basilisk's ash to blur your footsteps from watchers. Use them as needed. But remember, speed is essential. The conspirators grow bold. Their agents lurk even within the council chambers. You must not trust appearances. Lena fastened the satchel at her waist, then dipped her head in gratitude. "Thank you, mistress." Aurelie pressed a delicate kiss to Lena's brow. "Go swiftly, child. And remember, the orb of moonlit ink will appear where your faith is greatest. Let it guide you." As Lena passed through the forest, the stony pathway beneath the choir stairs remained hidden by gathering twilight shadows. Leaves rustled though the trees were bare, and every crackling twig sounded like an approaching footstep. The casing of sleet began to clatter, dotted by flickering wing beats overhead as owls wheeled on silent wings. Lena clutched the staff to her side, its emerald gem glowing faintly, offering her courage and purpose. At the temple's east side, the choir stairs rose like a silent sentinel, each step worn smooth by centuries of devout feet. Lena placed her palm upon the bottom stair, where she felt a discreet hum. She whispered a brief prayer taught by Brother Elias, an invocation of protective grace, and the stone shifted beneath her hand, revealing a narrow trapdoor etched with runes of concealment. Beneath, a dark tunnel sloped toward the crypt and catacombs. Only this passage bypassed the sealed gates Elias had blocked. Lena descended into the shadowed corridor, each step echoing like a heartbeat. At the tunnel's end lay the reliquary of luminous firs, a vaulted chamber lined with alabaster filigree. Candles atop golden sconces bathed the walls in gentle light. A silver dais centered the room, and upon it rested the tome of Ashen Shadows, a heavy, leather-bound volume engraved with shifting runes that pulsed with subdued energy. As Lena approached, a sudden flicker of movement caught her eye, a tall figure emerging from behind a pillar shrouded in darkness. "Do not come closer," a voice rasped, deep with scorn and regret. Lena froze, fingers tightening on the satchel. A slender silhouette detached itself from the shadows. Counselor Frederick Bellamy, a man known for his eloquent speeches at the village council. His once dignified features were twisted by an unnatural guile, pale veins writhed beneath his skin as though something edged just below the surface. "Bellamy," Lena's voice trembled. "Why are you here? You serve the temple." He stepped closer, eyes black as obsidian, lips curving into a malicious smile. "I serve truth, child. and truth demands sacrifice. He raised a long, bony finger toward the tome. Your guardians naively thought they could keep its power sealed forever. But I have seen what lurks beyond mortal sight, seen Althea's return, seen the glory we may be forced to embrace. Lena's heart pounded as she recalled Elias's warning. Bellamy must have slipped into the temple's inner court, brandishing dark knowledge. You betrayed us, she whispered, raising the staff. You used Alda's shade to break our wards. Father trusted you. Bellamy's laughter was harsh. Your father's fate blinded him, as it did all of you. I learned from Mistress Aurelie's younger days. She spoke of this chamber as if it were a prison for sinners. But who is to say that Althea's anger is not just? It was our ancestors who condemned her, feared her wisdom. We hold back progress in deference to superstition. Lena felt the staff pulse in her grip, urging her forward. Sins do not justify betrayal. She advanced toward the dais. Step away from the tome. Bellamy's expression turned savage. You dare threaten me? Brother Elias scrawled wards, but the council lacked the will. Now you will give me the tome, or I shall unleash something far more dreadful than Althea's wraith. With a swift motion, he produced a dagger carved with a sigil identical to the one in the catacombs, its blade pulsing with unholy light. Lena raised the staff defensively. Her palms warmed as the emerald gem blazed bright. A ribbon of light curled around her, a shield that repelled the air as she whispered the invocation Elias had taught. As Bellamy darted forward, Lena invoked the staff's sacred power. A beam of green radiance shot from its gem, striking Bellamy in the chest. He staggered backward, mouth open in a silent shriek as he dropped to one knee. Lena seized her chance and retrieved the tome, lifting it with reverence. The leather cover was warm beneath her palms, each rune shimmering with newfound hope. She wrapped her arms around it and retraced her steps, racing up the slope of the hidden passage. Behind her, Bellamy struggled to his feet, clutching at the wound on his chest, a black scorch from the staff's light. His eyes burned with hate as he fled deeper into the vault, his cries echoing like a curse. At the top of the hidden stairway, Lena knocked the trapdoor closed and pressed her shoulder against the stone. Her heart pounded as she slid down the path to Mr. Aurelie's cottage. The fading light outside set the snow aglow like a field of scattered stars. She held the tome close, its glowing runes whispering ancient truths and warnings. A storm of emotions swirled within her: relief, fear, determination, knowing that if Bellamy retrieved further forbidden lore, he might bring about a darkness that even Althea's spirit could not contain. As she slipped into the caretaker's cottage, Lena felt an unshakable resolve settle in her chest. With the tome safe in Aurelie's hands, the next step was to expose Bellamy's treachery to the council and rally the villagers before the conspirators struck again. Outside, the willow's branches swayed gently in a whispering song, as though urging her forward. Lena Harper, no longer just a harbinger of fear, but a beacon of hope, would stand as guardian of the temple's legacy. And in the coming night, when shadows threatened to swallow the last flicker of light, she would be ready to confront the betrayal that seeped from human hearts far deeper than any ancient curse. A week had passed since Lena Harper and brother Elias had thwarted the first attempt to unleash old Mother Althea's lingering curse. Still, Whispering Willow Temple and the village that clustered around its weathered walls remained under a pall of fear. Snow blanketed the fields beyond the orchard, muffling the world in silence broken only by the occasional tinkle of a cowbell or the scrape of a broom against wooden boards. Inside the temple's inner courtyard, Marcus Reed and a half-dozen loyal volunteers from the village militia reinforced barricades with timber and hammered iron stakes deep into the frozen earth. Their breath steamy in the frigid air, they moved with urgency. The conspiracy that had surfaced beneath the winter moon would not rest until its darkest ambitions were fulfilled. Lena Harper stood beside Marcus, holding a map spread over a wooden table. The map, inscribed by Mistress Orley's careful hand, marked safe passages to the caretaker's cottage, secret chambers in the catacombs, and most critically the hidden slide of earth where Old Mother Althea's tomb lay sealed. Lena's blue eyes darted from the map to Marcus and then to brother Elias, who paced nearby, staff in hand and worry etched across his weathered face. "Bellamy has vanished," Elias murmured, voice low. "After you reclaimed the Tome of Ashen Shadows," he staggered into the crypt's deeper tunnels. He could be anywhere now, assessing new dark rituals, gathering allies. "We cannot underestimate him." He tapped the staff's emerald gem, which shone with a faint inner light that pulsed in cadence with his heartbeat. "Tonight is the full moon. The wards laid above will weaken further. We must convene the village council by dusk and expose Bellamy's treachery before he can strike again." Marcus folded the map with careful fingers. "We'll need evidence of his betrayal. If we simply accuse him without proof, the village elders, many already swayed by his eloquent words, will dismiss us as alarmists." He glanced at Lena. "Do you still have the ash from the blackened blossom?" It proved his hand in desecrating the tomb. "We can present it as evidence, along with Orley's testimony." Lena nodded, her fingers brushing a small leather pouch at her waist. Inside lay the ash residue of the black blossom dust that shimmered with faint violet sparks when exposed to candlelight. "I'll bring it," she said softly. "But first, I must visit Mistress Orley to secure the tome's wards. If Bellamy or his agents find the manuscript weakened, they will seize it to further their ritual." She lifted her gaze to Elias. "Should I not return with you both to the council, I can avoid drawing attention that might endanger the tome." Elias rested a hand on Lena's shoulder. "The tome must be protected at all costs. Marcus and I will attend the council first to lay the groundwork. You go to Orley's cottage and ensure the wards hold. Be vigilant, the woods are no longer safe. I sense a presence watching even now." His eyes darted to the temple's shadowed periphery as if he expected a familiar silhouette to step from behind the pillar. Lena swallowed, then nodded. "I understand. Be careful." She turned, holding her staff, and strode toward the caretaker's cottage under an overcast sky that threatened snowfall. Her woolen cloak rushed behind her like a dark banner as she navigated the narrow, winding path between brambles and snow-laden willows. Every crack of ice beneath her boots, every rustle of frosted branches overhead, set her heart racing. By the time Lena reached Mistress Orly's cottage, a squat stone dwelling nestled beneath a stand of hemlock trees, the last sliver of daylight was fading. Embers glowed in the hearth where a kettle of violet broth simmered, its steam infused with rosemary and belladonna. Orly greeted Lena with a nod, then gestured to a low oak table strewn with parchment and runic chalk. "Thank the spirits you came," Orly said, her ember eyes reflecting concern. "Bellamy's reach runs deep. I sensed ripples in the wards last night, they wavered like dying flames." She held up the tome of Ashen Shadows, now securely confined within a canvas-lined box of iron. A dozen intricate warding sigils, drawn in silver ink, adorned the cover. "I renewed its seals at dawn. The tome's runes now burn with protective fire, but they will last but a fortnight before requiring renewal. Gather Marcus and Elias as soon as possible. For now, I must consult the village archives. There may be clues hidden in forgotten council minutes." Lena set down her staff and produced the small leather pouch containing the black blossom ash. As Orly poured the ash onto a silver saucer, Lena explained in hushed tones, "This is the ash Bellamy used to break the crypt ward." Candlelight revealed its violet sparks. "It is proof of his interference." Orly's brow creased with acceptance. "Yes, this is the very material from Althea's tomb." "Thank you, Rebecca. I will safeguard it. No one but you may touch it. Now, rest a few hours, your strength will be needed at the council." Lena nodded and gathered her staff, preparing to depart when Orly gripped her arm. "Wait. The village archives hold a hidden pocket in an ancient ledger, notes from Counselor Mathison, who first warned of Althea's curse centuries ago. They mention a second artifact, a mirror of obsidian capable of revealing a person's true nature. If Bellamy possesses it, he might mask his dark intentions among the council. We must unearth Mathison's ledger and locate that mirror. I will begin searching now." She pointed to a narrow bookshelf, where dusty tomes leaned precariously. "Stay here and rest if you can." Lena declined, offering a gentle nod before slipping back toward the temple. Twilight melted into gloom as she retraced her steps. She passed the moss-tinged gargoyle perched above the cloister arch, its stony eyes seeming to track her progress. Whispers of wind set the willow branches scratching against the chapel windows. Lena's staff glowed faintly, a beacon against encroaching gloom, guiding her steps as she navigated through the narrow corridors of the temple toward the council chamber. Meanwhile, Brother Elias and Marcus Reed made their way toward the council hall, a squat stone building adjacent to the temple gates. The hall's thick buttressed walls bore the village crest, a weeping willow framed by twin staves. A few wooden torches flickered along the outer walls, though wisps of smoke curled upward like watchful ghosts. Inside, the council chamber stretched wide and austere. Long benches faced a raised dais where 5 council seats stood empty, councillors assembled at sundown to debate village matters. But tonight, their chairs remained unoccupied save for one, a ruby velvet seat that belonged to Councillor Frederick Bellamy. Lena's heart had nearly stopped when she recalled his betrayal. She suddenly wondered if he would claim his seat as though nothing had happened. Elias opened the heavy double doors, sending a cold gust through the chamber. Marcus lingered at his side, hand on the crossed pommel of his sword. Candles burned atop wrought iron sconces, casting long shadows that swayed like specters along the carved stone walls. Elias cleared his throat, voice carrying across the hushed chamber. Counselors, citizens of Willowbrook, we convene under grave circumstances. As you know, not long ago, Althea's curse threatened our village, a ritual nearly completed beneath the full moon. Our efforts, with the aid of Keeper Orally and the brave sacrifice of our protectors, have foiled its emergence. Yet this does not erase the danger, the conspirators remain at large. From the shadows at the back, a hush spread through the handful of villagers who had assembled early. Frowns shadowed old men's faces, while younger farmers shifted uneasily. None had yet seen Bellamy, though rumors said he visited the village archives until late that morning, perhaps searching for that obsidian mirror. At Elias's words, a ripple of murmurs arose. Was the conspiracy truly over, or just beginning again? Elias advanced slowly. We stand at a crossroads. The tome of ashen shadows remains vulnerable in the caretaker's cottage under new warding, but for only a fortnight. He paused, letting his words sink in. Reports confirm that Bellamy, once a trusted counselor, broke the wards within Althea's crypt, seeking the tome for motives unknown. I shall present proof. He stepped to the dais and removed the silver saucer containing the violet-tinged ash. Flames danced around the vessel as he lifted it high. This material, drawn from the crypt, is a testament to Bellamy's betrayal. Only he has the skill and knowledge to break such wards. He let the ash settle back into the saucer as murmurs grew louder. Then Marcus stepped forward, placing himself at Elias's left. I, too, have witnessed Counselor Bellamy's duplicity. I found a hidden passage that led to the crypt gate, where only those with intimate knowledge of the temple's wards could gain entry. His footprints bearing 3 elongated toes led from the crypt to his private quarters. Marcus brandished a cloth-bound bundle, a pair of small footprints traced in plaster, the very prints Lena and he had studied in the orchard. These prints match those found by the orchard well, they are not the work of man or beast. Bellamy walked these halls at midnight, under the guise of loyalty, yet his soul belongs to darkness. A tense silence followed. A single torch flickered, sending wavering light across Chancellor Matthias Reinhold, framed by stained glass depicting St. Gawain's shield, who leaned forward, face pale. Reinhold's lips parted, as though he would dismiss Elias's claims as hysteria, but hesitated. A shadow of uncertainty passed through his eyes before he regained composure. At last, soft footsteps echoed behind them. All heads turned as Bellamy glided into the chamber, dressed in a dark cloak that billowed like a wraith. His obsidian eyes glinted, mirroring the torch's flicker. For a moment, every breath in the chamber ceased. Then Bellamy stepped to the dais, smirk curling on his lips. Brother Elias, Marcus reads such melodrama for a bit of harmless curiosity. You'd have me believe I sought to resurrect an ancient curse. Ridiculous. He motioned dismissively. Let the villagers choose where to place their trust, in an old monk who prattles of ghosts, or in a man of reason who knows that superstition weakens our will. The ashes you brandish, Elias, could come from any fire. And these plaster footprints. He gestured at Marcus's evidence. I've heard similar tracks in the forest. Some foul creature roams the orchard at night, stirring fear, so you might seem the hero. His voice dripped with condescension. Is it so hard to believe? Look upon me, who better than a son of this soil to lead our council. I say these accusations are a farce to distract us from real, mortal threats, famine, the harsh winter, the need to expand our harvest. He paused, crimson scarf sweeping from his shoulders. Call me traitor if you must, but the conspirators reside not in the crypt, but within the very hearts of those who refuse to see reason. A low rumble rose from the villagers as Bellamy's silvered tongue wove a tale to sow doubt. Elias bristled, but before he could answer, Chancellor Reinhold lifted a gauntlet hand for silence. His eyes, once so resolute, now flickered with uncertainty. These are serious claims, Reinhold said, voice quavering. Brother Elias, if Bellamy is as guilty as you say, we require definitive proof. The village cannot be led to panic by shadows on the wall. His gaze bore into Bellamy. Counselor, will you submit to a search of your quarters and person? If cleared, we shall consider this matter closed. Lena, standing with Marcus behind Elias, clenched her staff. She recalled the way Bellamy's countenance had darkened in the crypt's torchlight, an unnatural pallor that no ordinary man should wear. Stepping forward, she raised her voice, Chancellor, if I may. The chamber quieted. All eyes settled on her slender figure, clad in her cloak. I carry the obsidian mirror Bellamy used to conceal his true nature. Hide, if you dare. With that, she drew the small black mirror from her satchel, its surface as dark as still water on a moonless night, revealing Bellamy's reflection. His face twisted, teeth bared in a naked snarl no mortal should wear. Lena's voice rang clear, your mask is broken, Bellamy. The mirror does not lie. A collective gasp echoed as Bellamy's reflection shimmered between human visage and skeletal phantom. Some villagers stepped backward, others whispered prayers. Chancellor Reinhold's face turned ashen. Bellamy's smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of fury so fierce it seared the air. He lunged toward Lena, hands twisting into claws, but Marcus's sword flashed, steel greased by moonlight, intercepting the attack. The clang of metal on wood rang across the chamber as Bellamy recoiled, seething. Fool! Bellamy spat, voice laced with hatred. You use sorcery to deceive. I am the true protector of Willowbrook. He whipped off his cloak, revealing crude runic tattoos curling across his shoulders, sigils of Althea's old cult, once thought lost to time. I break you. In a sudden roar, he slashed a hand across the dais, cleaving it in two. Embers from torches sputtered, and the chamber plunged into half-light as panic erupted. Elias lunged forward, staff raised. Bellamy, your soul is beyond redemption. I counsel peace, but I will defend this village from your madness. He unsheathed his dagger, its silver edge gleaming as runes along the blade's length caught the torchlight. You shall answer for your deeds. In the chaos, a violent gust blew through the open doors as if summoned by some unseen force. Papers and map scrolls whirled across the floor. Lena, clutching the obsidian mirror to her chest, felt the staff's gem pulse wildly warning her of an even greater darkness stirring beyond the council walls. Bellamy snarled, gathering shadowy energy around him. The floor groaned as cracks spiderwebbed through the stone. Villagers fell back, wide-eyed, as Elias and Marcus confronted the traitor. Lena's heart pounded. This was no ordinary confrontation of man versus man, but a battle between faith and forbidden power. Shoulder to shoulder, they braced against the gathering storm. "Fight well," Marcus murmured to Elias. Then, with a shared nod, the two moved in unison. Bellamy thrust arms skyward, drawing ancient curses from the air. Shadows coalesced behind him, forming the shape of a massive owl whose wings beat against the torch's flames. Its crystalline eyes reflected fury and longing. The owl shrieked an otherworldly sound that shattered candles and rattled hearts. But just as the shadow owl lunged, Elias struck. His dagger flashed with consecrated light, severing the air. A searing beam of violet energy erupted from the blade, cleaving the owl's neck of shadow. The creature dissipated in a flurry of black motes, leaving Bellamy exposed and panting with rage. "How dare you?" Bellamy hissed, advancing as though to strike Elias down. But Lena stepped forward, obsidian mirror raised high. As the mirror caught the faint torchlight, it awaited the reflection of Bellamy's true form. His eyes flickered as the mirror's surface drank in his visage. Lena whispered a protective incantation taught by orally. The mirror's obsidian surface rippled, then glowed with a phosphorescent sheen, sending waves of rippling reflections across the chamber. Bellamy screamed as his reflection morphed from a confident, smooth-eyed counselor to a face that twisted and gnarled a visage halfway between man and undead wraith. The runes on his skin sizzled as though the very essence of his betrayal recoiled. The villagers gasped, some crying out in relief, others retreating in horror as their deepest fears were manifested. Bellamy clenched his fists, eyes blazing with shame and fury, then lunged at Lena with savage speed. Marcus intercepted the blow, sword meeting Bellamy's dagger with a thunderous clang. The force sent Marcus stumbling back, blade whirling in a defensive arc. Bellamy's second swing was deflected as Elias leaped forward, dagger carving a holy pentagram in the air. Light blossomed from the rune, forcing Bellamy back. For a moment, the traitor's face softened as though he glimpsed remorse. But then his features contorted, dark tendrils creeping from his eyes. "You have no idea what you've done," Bellamy snarled, voice heavy with regret. "I only sought justice for old Mother Althea." He lunged again, claws tearing through Elias's ward. The holy light sputtered, then faded. At that instant, a deafening crack ran through the chamber as the great oak doors thundered open. Frost-laden air slammed inside. Lena turned to see the full moon blazing through the entrance, its silver light unraveling the flickering torch flames. Bracing herself, she chanted the invocation orally had engraved on the tome's cover. The air thickened, then resonated with the chorus of ethereal voices, those of villagers past who had upheld the temple's sacred trust. From the temple's soaring archways emerged a procession of hooded figures, lanterns raised high. They stepped into the chamber as if called by the moon itself, mistresses and masters of the ancient faith, the venerable keeper orally, elders who had long since sworn oaths, healers, farmers, and smiths, each bearing a relic of the temple's founding. With each step, their lantern's light grew, casting a corridor of luminous brilliance that forced Bellamy back. He hissed, staggering beneath the spiritual onslaught. No. This cannot be. The figures halted, forming a protective circle around Marcus and Elias. At its center, Lena held the obsidian mirror high, its dark surface now reflecting not a single soul's face but a sea of candle flames flickering across every villager's eyes. The ripple of moonlight across the chamber was blinding. Bellamy screamed, and the floor beneath him cracked, sending shards of stone upward. He crouched, wincing, as though beaten not by steel but by conscience. His shoulders shook, and a tortured sob escaped him. Chancellor Reinhold, drawn out of stunned disbelief, approached his former counselor. "Frederick, why?" he asked, voice trembling. "We trusted your counsel." He knelt beside Bellamy, gently removing the dagger whose runes smoldered with malevolent light. The stone beneath seemed to weep molten tears. "Tell me, in your own words, why you betrayed us all." Bellamy collapsed onto one knee, face buried in his hands. The hush that fell across the chamber was deeper than any winter's night, broken only by his ragged sobs and the flicker of lantern light. Finally, he lifted his head, eyes burning red-rimmed and haunted. "In my youth," he rasped, voice raw, "I sought knowledge. I discovered a hidden chamber beneath my family's estate journals that spoke of Althea's wisdom, of powers stolen by the church. My ancestors wronged her. I believed if I could command those powers, I could atone for their sins, strengthen Willowbrook. But the deeper I delved, the more the darkness consumed me. I lost sight of the good I meant to bring. I only wanted justice, but in my blindness, I nearly damned us all." Trembling, Bellamy rose, placing the dagger on the dais. The runes extinguished in a hiss. The villagers watched as he sank to his knees, shoulders slumped, runic tattoos sinking into his skin as though recoiling from his own shame. Lena's staff lay at her side, its emerald gem now a steady glow, a pulse of promise for the future. Chancellor Reinhold rose, eyes soft with pity. "You will be spared, Frederick, for revealing the truth. But we must ensure you cannot ever harm us again. In the days to come, we will decide your fate together." He scanned the council chamber. Though many chairs remained empty, the villagers who had gathered around offered nods of assent. A few wiped tears from reddened cheeks, others gripped lanterns, the soft glow reflecting newfound hope. At the chamber's threshold, Brother Elias stepped forward, staff raised. "Let this event remind us of the fragility between light and darkness, between trust and betrayal. We cannot let fear dictate our hearts. Together, we stand as guardians of the temple, not out of obligation, but out of love for one another and for the land that sustains us." The villagers bowed heads. Marcus stepped to Lena's side, offering his arm. She pressed into him, shivering with cold and emotion. Outside, the full moon rose high, its argent beams pouring through the arched doorway like a blessing. The flickering lanterns glowed in response, and a gentle hush fell over Whispering Willow Temple. Behind them, Bellamy remained on his knees, penitent, the weight of his own deeds pressed upon him like a millstone. And as the villagers filed out guided by Elias's steady chant and the protective circle of Keeper Orley's faith, they knew that though darkness had nearly claimed their village, the bonds of truth and unity would prevail. As Lena Harper stepped into the moonlit courtyard, Marcus at her side, she felt the warmth of the temple's ancient power now stronger, its wards reforged by the courage of souls dedicated to safeguarding Willowbrook. But her gaze drifted to the vault of stars above, where unseen currents of magic still pulsed. She knew the coming weeks would demand vigilance, resolve, and faith. For the blackened blossom's ashes breathed warnings that dangers still lurked in hidden hearts, waiting for a moment to arise again. Yet in that moment, Lena allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. The first battle had been won, the traitors unmasked, and the tome encased in wards of living light. Hand in hand with Marcus, under Brother Elias's watchful gaze and Keeper Orley's gentle blessing, she stepped onto the path that would lead them deeper into the mysteries of Whispering Willow Temple and deeper into the destinies intertwined by faith, courage, and the whispered promise of dawn. In the days that followed the council's reckoning, a brittle calm settled over Willowbrook. But beneath frozen fields and snow-laden roofs, new currents of unease swirled. With Councillor Bellamy's betrayal laid bare, many villagers hoped the worst was over. Yet Brother Elias, ever vigilant, could not shake the sense that unseen eyes watched from beyond the temple walls. And Lena Harper, whose name had become synonymous with both courage and mystery, felt her own heart stir with questions she could not yet answer. Before dawn one morning, Lena slipped from her bed within the temple guest chamber and made her way to the courtyard. A pale ribbon of moonlight cut across frost-glazed stones, illuminating the sentinel statues that flanked the great oak doors. She paused, listening. Distant howls echoed from the northern woods, where winds whipped skeletal branches. Lena folded her cloak tightly, then descended the steps toward the caretaker's cottage, intent on meeting Mistress Orley. Hidden truths and half-sentences from the council lingered in her mind, especially Bellamy's cryptic mention of an obsidian mirror beyond the tome. The mirror's shards might still lie hidden, and as long as any fragment remained, the conspirators could conjure illusions to fracture the village's trust. Inside the cottage, Orley worked by candlelight, seated at a low table strewn with vellum, ink pots, and alchemical vials. The tome of ashen shadows lay open before her, its runes pulsing with a faint silvery glow in response to her touch. Lena entered quietly, watching her mentor mix a pale blue powder with distilled spring water. Bunches of dried herbs dangled from each rafter, foxglove and mugwort, rosemary, and lavender, an arsenal of protection against unseen malice. "Rebecca," Orley intoned without looking up. "Bellamy may be in confinement, but his influence haunts these halls still. I sensed ripples of illusion last night, whispers that someone wore a false face. We must root out every shard of the obsidian mirror." Only then can we ensure he cannot mask his kin. She dabbed her finger into the mixture and drew a glowing rune onto the blank parchment beside her. I need you to journey to the abandoned Benedictine chapel beyond Frost Hollow. Rumor holds that the original mirror lay in a reliquary there. If any shards remain, we must secure or destroy them. Lena's gaze hardened. I will go tonight, she said. But I must speak with Brother Elias first. He knows the old paths through the forest. Orally nodded, offering the parchment with the rune. Carry this protective script. Trace it on your palms when you feel illusion rising. The path to Frost Hollow crosses hidden streams and pitfalls. This will help you see through trickery. She slid the rune into Lena's palm. You are ready to face whatever lies beyond the flames of falsehood. That evening, under a sky so clouded that stars seemed extinguished, Lena met Marcus and Brother Elias at the edge of the northern woods. Marcus, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak atop his militia harness, scanned a tree lean with a soldier's wariness. Elias adjusted his oaken staff, its emerald gem now glowing a steady green rather than the pulsing light of urgency. At their feet lay a rolled tapestry, Orly's map to the Benedictine chapel, enough to guide them through miles of forest. Take care, Lenore, Elias said, using the formal name she had taken among the temple's initiates. The roads to Frost Hollow have been drought in legends and sorrow. Many who sought the chapel never returned. He placed a hand above her heart before anointing her palm with a drop of consecrated oil. Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. Let faith guide your steps, not fear. Marcus gripped her hand, lips tight. I'll come with you as far as the old willow grove, but after that, it's your quest alone. He glanced at Elias. We cannot expose both of you. I must return to the village at first light. Lena nodded, bracing herself as Marcus lifted an arrowed torch. Together they plunged into the woods, Elias's staff illuminating runic markers only he could see. Shadows danced between the trees, and every rustle sent Lena's heart racing. As they passed the grove of ancient willows whose gnarled limbs bowed like mourners, they came to a fork in the path. Elias gestured. This way, he whispered, pointing toward a narrower track shrouded by brambles. Follow the runes, the route is safe. With a final goodbye to Marcus, his eyes lingering on her like a vow, Lena and Elias ventured deeper. The wind rose, carrying the scent of pine and decay. Branches snapped overhead, and sometimes Lena thought she heard faint chanting borne on the breeze, as if ghostly voices spoke in tongues half forgotten. Elias glanced at her, face solemn. We are not alone. Suddenly, the runic glow on Elias's staff flickered and dimmed. Lena's pulse stuttered. A low murmur coursed through the forest, vibrating beneath her feet. With a sudden crack, moaning branches fell, creating a barrier across the path. Lena stumbled back, eyes widening as a dark figure emerged through the veil of mist, a crouched shape tall and gaunt, its head covered by a hood fashioned of black vines, and in its skeletal hand, a shard of glass flickered crimson. Abandon your quest, it rasped, voice echoing like silver on ice. The mirror's shards belong to us now. You cannot prevent the truth from fracturing. The hooded figure raised the shard toward Elias, who hobbled forward, staff aloft. Light radiated from the emerald gem in response, forming a narrow barrier between them and the intruder. "Show yourself," Elias commanded, voice strong though his hip throbbed with pain. The figure laughed, a sound like shattered glass. "I am the first of Bellamy's heirs of shadow," it sneered. "I will not be undone by candlelight or runes." With a swift motion, it hurled the obsidian shard at Elias's barrier. The shield flared and held, but sparks flew. Elias winced, then raised his dagger to chant an incantation. Lena joined the chant, recalling Orly's script. Their combined invocation forced the hooded spirit backward, but before they could advance, the figure lunged into a stand of hemlocks and vanished in a swirl of darkness. Lena lunged after it, but Elias grasped her shoulder. "No." He hissed, pain and worry resting his voice. "The wards are thin here. We must not follow blindly." The hooded figure's laughter echoed down the path, leaving Lena with a swirl of dread. Clutching Elias's arm, she steadied her breath. The rune glow on his staff returned, though it danced like a heartbeat on the edge of darkness. "Are you hurt?" she asked, voice soft as she knelt beside him. Elias's face creased as he pressed his dagger against an ache in his hip. "Just the old wound." He managed a wan smile. "The true battle lies beyond Frost Hollow. That spirit sought to lure you away. Now, more caution is required." Taking a deep breath, Lena fixed her gaze ahead. "Then we press on. We cannot falter." Elias nodded and used his staff to propel himself forward. Lena stayed close, bracing him as they retraced their steps to the hidden fork. Every flicker of torchlight revealed shifting shadows that seemed alive. When they emerged from the dense undergrowth, the sky above them cleared, revealing a pale moon that seemed almost too bright, unnatural, cold. Before them lay Frost Hollow, a broad valley where snowdrifts rose like silent waves. At its center stood the Benedictine chapel, an outline of crumbling stone illuminated by moonlight. The chapel's once arched windows were shattered, and dark vines coiled around its weathered facade. A single spire clawed skyward, its cross long since bent askew. Lena felt it chill deeper than the winter's cold as she approached. Elias held back the staff's light, revealing shifting runes carved into the chapel's door. "These glyphs predate Althea's curse," he whispered. "They ward against foul magic. But see, some have been clawed away, nearly rubbed smooth." Lena reached out, fingertips brushing the worn symbols. "Someone came here recently." She stared at the chipped runes, tracing a finger over the ghost of an image, a coiling serpent's tail. Before she could speak, a piercing screech rent the night. From the chapel's interior, a cascade of spectral figures erupted, Benedictine monks, their robes tattered, eyes glowing with spectral fire. They hovered at the entrance, and each spirit held a glass shard, fragments of the obsidian mirror hovering like shards of night in their ethereal hands. Their moans rose in unison, a chorus of lamentation that threatened to shred the veil between realities. Brother Elias raised his dagger, chanting an old blessing and exorcism to quell wandering shades. Lena joined him, voice trembling but resolute. Light gathered in a swirling column above the chapel's threshold, pushing back the wailing spirits. One by one, the specters dissipated in violet sparks, releasing their shards into the wind. Lena braced herself as a piece of the shattered mirror dropped at her feet, reflecting moonlight like a dark promise. She stooped to retrieve it, astonished to find the edge smooth and sharp. As she grasped it, the shard's surface shimmered, revealing ripples of shadow that undulated like ink in water. Within the mirror, Lena glimpsed a flicker of Bellamy's face, eyes blazing with fury, but then the reflection twisted, revealing something new, an image of a tall, silver-haired woman standing within the chapel, her face half luminous, half shrouded in darkness. Lena's breath caught. Orally. No, she whispered, heart throbbing. How could Mistress Orally appear among these spirits, half bound to their curse? Elias cried out, seizing her arm. Be wary. That is Maya Alden, the abbess who once bound Althea's spirit. She gave her life sealing the chapel, and her shade lingers as its guardian. Yet now, she seems bound to the mirror shards, searching for release. He pointed to an alcove where the abbess's statue once stood, now broken into shards of marble. Lena recognized the oath inscriptions at its base, half buried under snow and debris. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lena held the shard aloft. If we can show the mirror only to truth, perhaps we can free her. She inhaled, holding the shard before Elias's staff. The emerald gem pulsed as though echoing her heartbeat. Help me channel the light, she whispered to Elias. Together, they recited an invocation of cleansing words older than Willowbrook itself. As their voices soared, the shard's obsidian surface flamed with emerald light, then faded, revealing the abbess's reflection, now serene rather than tortured. With a final shimmer, the shard cracked and dissolved into motes of silver light that drifted skyward. A hush fell upon Frost Hollow. Where once the chapel loomed as a vessel of dread, it now seemed at peace, its wards rebalanced by the abbess's liberation. Lena exhaled, feeling the weight of the shard lift from her palm. Elias lowered his dagger with a tremulous sigh. We have freed her spirit, he said. Her essence will guide us in place of those fragments. He turned to Lena, pride softening his aged features. You have done well. Now, let us take the rest of the shards back to Orally for destruction. They gathered the remaining pieces of mirror scattered on the chapel floor, tiny slivers that glinted like the eyes of ghosts. Each piece brimmed with potential peril, but Lena, with Elias's guidance, sealed them in a leather pouch embroidered with warding runes. With that burden lightened, they emerged from the chapel under the full moon's glow, carrying not only physical shards but the revelation that the abbess's spirit now watched over them. As dawn's first light brushed the eastern horizon, Lena and Elias descended the winding path back to Willowbrook. The village lay silent under a sapphire sky. Here and there, smoke rose from chimneys, and figures moved along snow-packed roads. Lena felt the hidden weight of destiny pressing upon her, yet also the warmth of newfound hope. When they reached the temple gates, Marcus awaited them, torch raised. His face shifted between relief and awe as he saw Elias and Lena emerge triumphant, and the leather pouch of mirror shards in her hand. Before he could speak, Elias raised his staff and said, "We have recovered and released the Abyss's spirit. The mirror's curse is undone, its power returned to the light." Lena released a breath she did not know she had been holding. Marcus stepped forward, concern softening his features. "You both are safe, thanks be to the dawn." In the temple's inner courtyard, as the sun crested the horizon and birds sang across frost-crusted eaves, Lena tucked the pouch of mirror shards into Aurelie's waiting hands. The caretaker's eyes gleamed when Lena recounted the Abyss's liberation. "The Abyss's spirit will guard this land," Aurelie said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Her sacrifice was not in vain." Lena collapsed onto a snow-dusted bench, exhaustion melting into a quiet exhilaration. Elias placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You have faced illusions, spirits, and betrayal, and you have triumphed beyond measure." He looked to Marcus, who nodded gravely. "Our village owes you more than words can say." But as the first rays of sunlight danced on the temple's stained glass windows, Lena's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where dark clouds gathered beyond the eastern ridges. Though the mirror's shards were gone, her heart warned that new trials still lay ahead. For in Willowbrook, where faith and fear danced together beneath ancient willows, the war between hidden shadows and the light that banished them was never truly finished. And so Lena stood, warmed by the dawn, her staff's emerald glow fused with the sun's golden promise. She would continue to walk the path between worlds, guided by faith and bound by purpose, until every last echo of Althea's curse was silenced and until Willowbrook knew peace again. 2 weeks had passed since Lena Harper and brother Elias had recovered and destroyed the last shards of the obsidian mirror. Winter's grip on Willowbrook had only tightened, wind carried bites of frost that clung to eyelashes, and each dawn gilded the world in brittle ice. Yet despite lingering cold, the village breathed a fragile hope. The temple's wards were reforged, the Abyss's spirit was freed to watch over the land, and Marcus Reed resumed his duties, training a small militia to guard against any lingering dark plots. But comfort proved fleeting. On a late afternoon when the sun hovered low behind pines, casting the world into an early gloom, Marcus approached the temple courtyard with troubled news. He found Lena, brother Elias, and mistress Aurelie gathered around a long wooden table strewn with scrolls and runic chalk. The air smelled of soot and dried lavender from the hearth, but Marcus's arrival delivered a gust of biting wind that rattled the sills. "Brother Elias," Marcus called, voice tense. He clenched his gloved hands at his sides. "A farmer named Harlan came to me earlier. He claims his cattle, 50 head of them, were found yesterday in the northern meadow, standing as though turned to stone. Their hides are frozen solid as if imbued with some unnatural frost, and from their flanks leak a grey ichor, like cold ash." He hesitated, eyes flicking to Lena. "We thought it might be a contagious blight or a natural freeze, but no, one injured cow was wandering at dawn, steps jerky and unnatural." The villagers struck fear, believing a curse has fallen upon the land. Lena's heart quivered, memories of Althea's crypt and the mirror's twisted illusions rose unbidden. Chamomile and rosemary wards should have protected the fields, yet something deeper has invaded. She exchanged a glance with Elias. "We need to investigate immediately." She rose, her cloak swirling behind her. "If this is the work of a new cult, we must not wait until nightfall." Elias nodded and set aside a feathered quill. "I have sensed a shift in the earth's weave, an icy tremor under my feet when I slept last night. Mistress Aurelie, do you recall any mention of a winter's curse surviving beyond Althea's binding?" Aurelie, who had catalogued ancient tomes in the courtyard's alcove since dawn, frowned. "In my studies, I found a reference to the Frost Blood Covenant, a cult that revered the notion of the land's purity through suffering. They believed that by hardening the earth, freezing its heart, they could birth a new world of untainted strength. Their leader was known as the Marrow Seer, rumored to harness grief and frost together to crush the weak. Most believed them quashed centuries ago. But now, I fear they might have returned." Lena swallowed. "Return under whose leadership?" "Bellamy is imprisoned. Yet cults rarely hinge on a single head, more often, they splinter into hidden cells." She drew a deep breath. "We must see this for ourselves. Marcus, gather a dozen men, those you trust most. We ride for Harlan's farm at first light. Elias and I will examine the fields and test the cattle ourselves." Marcus hesitated for only a moment before bowing his head in agreement. "At your command." Before dawn's pale glow had fully brightened the sky, Lena and Elias climbed onto their horses at the temple stables. Marcus and his militia trotted out beside them, torches flickering a line of dark silhouettes against the fading stars. A fresh blanket of snow muffled each hoofbeat as they crossed the northern flats. Distant pines creaked under frost's weight, every spire of ice seemed to tremble with hidden intent. By the time the first sunbeams broke the horizon, they arrived at Harlan's farm. Smoke curled from the chimney of a weathered lodge, but the fields sprawled before them in silent lucidity. 100 cattle, scattered, stood stiffly beneath a gray sky. Lena's breath caught as she nudged her horse forward. Strands of frost clung to the udders and flanks of the beasts, whose glassy eyes stared unblinking into emptiness. Their hooves were rooted in frozen hoof prints, as though price to roam had been paid in blood and terror. Elias dismounted, already voicing a prayer under his breath, throat moving in the cadence of an ancient tongue. Lena leapt from her saddle and knelt by the nearest cow, its hide hardened like marble. She pressed the fingers of her right hand, tracing a rune of warmth from the staff's teaching. The icy crust beneath her palm crackled, small fissures spidering across its surface, but the cow did not stir. Before her lay the true horror, within patches of bristled white, dark veins traced through the flesh-like roots of some noxious tree. Lena felt bile rise in her throat. This was no simple freeze, but a corruption that turned flesh to animating stone. She looked up at Elias, face pale. "What kind of dark alchemy is this?" She touched the staff's emerald gem, and a shimmering wave of warmth pulsed from it, melting a thin patch of frost on the cow's side. For a moment, the sea of white seemed to retreat, but then the cold returned, and the cow's flesh hardened once more. Lena withdrew her hand, breath swirling in panic. The wards are failing. It's beyond natural frost. Elias drew forth a small vial filled with pale blue powder azure frostbane, mixed by Aurelie's steady hand. He scattered it along the cow's spine, chanting a short blessing. The runes on his dagger glowed faintly, and for a moment warmth radiated through the beast's hide, softening the ice. Yet Elias's expression fractured. It weakens the freeze, but cannot reverse what's already done. The Marrow Seer's hand runs deep. Lena rose, shoulders dancing with cold. She turned to Marcus, who had dismounted and was speaking with Harlan, his rough features creased with worry. The farmer's blue-gray eyes brimmed with sorrow. "We lost 10 calves last night," Harlan said in a voice like grinding stone. "I woke to hear unnatural hissing like ice cracking underneath. By morning, the mother cows lay stone cold, turned." Marcus placed a steadying hand on Harlan's shoulder. "We'll stop this." He glanced at Lena. "What next?" Elias studied the horizon, where pale clouds gathered thickly. "The source of this must lie upstream, where the Frost Blood cult used to gather High Hollow Circle. If they performed a secondary ritual to reenact their winter's plague, the heart of that curse lies there." He looked at Lena, eyes glinting with resolve. "We must venture there once the men have secured the survivors. Only by disrupting their circle can the land thaw and the curse be broken." Lena nodded, breath condensing in the frigid air. She swung into the saddle and raised her voice for all to hear. "Men of Willowbrook, we ride to High Hollow. Whoever stands with us, dismount and join our quest." A dozen faces, farmers, blacksmiths, and a handful of young men stepped forward, determination etched on each. Marcus's militia fell into formation, torches raised, swords drawn, eyes bright with purpose. As Lena nudged her mare northward, Elias rode beside her, staff gleaming with emerald light. "Keep your heart strong, Rebecca. The Frost Blood cult wields grief like a weapon. They feed on sorrow to ignite their blizzards. We must not give them that power." Lena swallowed. "I will not falter." High Hollow Circle lay deep in the northern forest, a clearing ringed by ancient sycamore and spruce whose limbs drooped under the weight of years and snow. As they approached, the woodland hush deepened, birdsong died, and even the wind held its breath. The narrow path opened into a circle of frost-kissed stones, each nearly 3 feet tall, carved with unfamiliar runes that pulsed with cold blue fire. At the center lay a shallow pit of blackened earth, from which slender mist spiraled upward like smoke. Elias dismounted first, stepping forward to trace a finger over the icy runes carved into the stone nearest him. These glyphs predate Altheas, drawn by those who sought to freeze the world's heart. The Marrow Seer uses them to channel grief into raw freeze. We cannot approach without disrupting the runes. He set his staff against the edge of the pit and chanted under his breath, words that unfroze the runic fire, dimming its glow to ember. One by one, the runes flickered out, leaving the stones as silent monoliths. but the pit's lining was not empty. Lena and Marcus held torches aloft, revealing a heap of tattered robes and torn parchment dampened by frost. The parchment bore scrawled incantations in a brittle black ink, alchemical writings meant to bind sorrow and ice together. With a sudden gust, the pit's mist coalesced into a figure, tall, gaunt, eyes glinting like polished bone. The Marrow Seer had arrived. Lips split in a malicious smile, the seer raised two gloved hands and murmured syllables that echoed like bones grinding. The circle's runes blazed to life again, and the pit's center spilled forth a cascade of frost that snaked toward Lena's feet. She seized her staff and slammed its emerald tip into the frozen ground. A pulse of warmth radiated outward, forcing the frost to retreat in tremoring whirls. Elias knelt beside her, tracing runes in the damp earth that blotted out the seer's conjuration. The runes glowed briefly, crumbling to gray ash. "They anticipate our arrival," Elias gasped. "He is stronger than I foresaw." Lena looked up and met the seer's eyes, two cold bright orbs that shimmered with sorrow's depths. "Your grief will not claim this village," she called, voice firm. "Come and face us." The Marrow Seer slipped through the circle, robes swirling like wind-racked snow. His hood fell back, revealing a pale man with ice-white hair plaited in coils, and a face etched with deep sorrow, eyes rimmed red, as though he had wept for years. He moved forward, raising a dagger carved from a single shard of black crystal. "You dare challenge me? I offer the world a new birth through the crucible of suffering. Your tears, your agony, they fuel the land's transcendence." Elias rose, staff at the ready. "You corrupt the essence of sorrow. Grief is not a weapon to be wielded against the innocent." He gestured to Lena. "Rebecca now." Lena gripped her staff's emerald gem, feeling warmth bloom in her palm. She uttered a plea for mercy, for the land, and for the seer's own redemption. A tendril of light extended from the staff, unspooling in a thread of brilliance that coiled around the seer's dagger. The crystal dagger cracked, shards falling to the mossy ground. The seer staggered, clutching the remaining fragments. "No," he whispered, anguish flickering in his eyes. The runes along the stone circle sputtered, their cold blue fire sputtering out. As the frost-laced mist dissipated, Lena approached, and raised her voice, "Your grief need not freeze our world. Let go of this anguish. We will honor Old Mother Althea's legacy of compassion, not condemn Willowbrook to eternal winter." The seer fell to his knees, tears sparkling like dew along his frost-bitten cheeks. "My name is Silas Calder," he murmured. "I bore witness to my family's death during the siege of Frostgate. The temple denied us refuge. All I knew was grief, and I vowed to forge a new world of ice, where no one would suffer hunger again." He sank his face into his hands. "But I became the very monster I sought to defeat." Lena knelt beside him, removing her gloves and placing her warm hands on his frost-laden shoulders. The staff's light pulsed through her palms, lending warmth to his rigid form. Elias echoed her earlier chant, weaving an invocation of forgiveness that shimmered with emerald runes around the clearing. Silas's shoulders shook in an uncontrolled sob, tears carving rivulets through the frost on his cheeks. As he wept, the stone's runes dimmed and dissolved, and the pit's blackened earth thawed, releasing a forgotten fragrance of loam and lichen. Nature's lament gave way to birdsong on the wind. Small red breasts alit in nearby spruce, their calls like a benediction. When Silas fell silent, the clearing lay bathed in dawn's first light, soft, golden rays that thawed the fresh snow, revealing emerald moss beneath. Lena smiled as she extended a hand to help Silas to his feet. "Willowbrook will welcome you," she said gently. "Your grief has been honored. Now rest, heal, and find peace." Elias placed his hand atop the staff and let its emerald glow fade. "The Frostblood Covenant is no more," he declared. "The Marrow Seer's rage has been vanquished by the compassion he thought lost. We have saved the land." As the militia arrived, securing Silas and collecting the last fragments of shattered crystal, Marcus beckoned Lena and Elias to join him for the ride home. Snow glittered under the morning sun like a field of diamonds. Silas, now free of the bonds of his ritual, bowed his head in silent gratitude before the trio. Lena mounted her horse, the crisp air rushing past her as her heart swelled with relief. Elias settled onto his saddle with quiet pride. Marcus slid into the saddle beside them, a broad grin lighting his face. "You remarkable pair," he said, voice soft with awe. "You saved us again." Lena offered him a tired but genuine smile. "We saved each other. The temple, Willowbrook, and even Silas." Her gaze drifted across the thawing fields, where cattle now roamed freely, their hides glossy in the sun's warmth. "The land breathes once more." Yet as they rode toward the temple, Lena could not shake the sense that new trials lay ahead. Winter's depths had tested their resolve, but the world's winter both in climate and in hearts was never truly vanquished. She squeezed her staff's emerald gem as if drawing strength from its inner light. "Let us be ready," she murmured to Elias. "For as long as grief exists, someone may seek to wield it as a weapon." Elias nodded, his weathered face gentle but firm. "And as long as we have faith and unity, we shall stand resolute. For Willowbrook, and for all who call it home." And so, under the pale sun of a thawing winter's dawn, Lena Harper, Brother Elias, and Marcus Reed returned to the temple, their hearts intertwined by trials overcome and their spirits steeled for whatever shadows might yet awaken. Spring's first breath lingered on the air as Willowbrook awoke from its long winter slumber. Late snowmelt dribbled through thawing fields, and the scent of earth, pungent and sweet, mingled with budding crocuses at every roadside. At Whispering Willow Temple, Lena Harper and Brother Elias stood on the steps watching villagers dip wooden buckets into the newly opened well. Frost's grip had finally loosened, and for many, it felt like a rebirth of both land and spirit. "This is the season of renewal," Elias murmured, tracing the carved runes on his oaken staff with a ritualistic touch. "Yet even rebirth carries hidden threats. We must remain vigilant." Lena brushed a strand of dark hair from her face, her cerulean eyes bright beneath hooded lashes. The fields seem healthy, Harlan's cattle graze by the creek once more. Silas Calder and his few followers have pledged their loyalty to the village. I sense peace, but also a gentle tremor beneath the soil, as though the land remembers past horrors. She lifted her gaze to the ancient willow, its twisting limbs now sprouting tender green shoots. Do you feel it too? Elias nodded gravely, setting aside his staff. I do. The abbess's spirit watches vigilantly, but the roots of this willow run deep, reaching to secrets older than even old Mother Althea's crypt. The harmony we have won is fragile. He clasped Lena's shoulder and smiled kindly. Come. The council has requested our presence. They wish to celebrate your deeds. Over at the council hall, Marcus Reed waited beside a long wooden table laid out with spring lamb, honeyed bread, and a cask of pale cider. Elias, Lena, and Mistress Aurelie stepped into the spacious chamber, where Chancellor Matthias Reinhold smiled with relief. The room's walls, once hung with empty tapestries, now displayed vibrant banners, one bearing the temple's crest, another showing an uprooted black blossom crossed by an emerald staff. Welcome, protectors of Willowbrook, Reinhold greeted. Tonight, we mark not only the thawing of winter but the forging of a new covenant between temple and town. He gestured to Marcus. And let us not forget Captain Reed's militia, who patrol our borders and safeguard Harlan's lands. Marcus inclined his head. Elias offered nods to the gathered counselors, Harlan among them, before extending his hand to Lena. This celebration honors your bravery, Rebecca, he said, using her formal temple name. Lena's cheeks warmed as she accepted a goblet of cider. Aurelie directed her gaze to Lenore, Lena's chosen name among the temple initiates, whispering, "Keep your mind open tonight." Amid celebration, the roots beneath the willow may yet reveal more. Lena followed Aurelie's glimmering gaze to the ballroom's far corner, where three hooded figures stood in shadow. Their presence felt strangely out of place, no one had invited them, and yet the cacophony of music and laughter paused as they slipped inside. Two wore travelers' cloaks drenched with melting snow, while the third, a tall woman, wore a silver mantle embroidered with arcane symbols. Her eyes, pale as dawn, locked onto Lena's for a heartbeat before she melted back into the throng. Lena's pulse quickened. "What do you see?" Marcus asked softly as he joined Elias on her other side. Lena shook her head. An unfamiliar presence, possibly from distant lands. That woman's eyes reflect an ancient sorrow, though not of our winters. Something older, beyond even the Frost Blood Covenant. Elias frowned, setting his cup on a bench. Then we must learn who they are. He stepped forward, nodding politely to Chancellor Reinhold. "Chancellor, might I introduce my acolyte, Brother Jared? We believe he brings counsel from distant monasteries." Elias's tone held authority, never revealing the doubt within. Brother Jared, a slender monk with a shaved head and a serene expression, stepped forward to meet Reinhold's handshake. His eyes, so unexpectedly pale they seemed ice-hewn, glided over Elias, Lena, and Marcus. I have journeyed beyond the eastern peaks, Jared said, voice smooth as river water. I carry word of an ancient guardian who slumbers beneath this willow. Should the covenant between land and people wane, that guardian's curse may awaken once more. His gaze lingered on Lena. The roots of the willow grow entwined with the fault line of moonfire, an old ley that channels magic from the world's heart. When the frost blood and Althea's curses fell upon this land, they fractured that fault line. To fully restore balance, the guardian must be appeased. A hush fell across the chamber. Harlan, deep-set lines of worry creasing his face, leaned forward. This land feeds our children. If a greater curse looms, we must know more. Jared inclined his head, expression placid. I asked Father Elias and his acolytes to gather at midnight beneath the willow's roots. There, the guardian's essence remains as an echo, neither fully spirit nor flesh. Only through the convergence rite, which must involve the temple's staff and the Bajus's shield, can we bind its power to light, not ice. Lena's breath tightened. The convergence rite, she had read of it in Orly's dusty tomes. It required 3 artifacts: the emerald staff, the obsidian mirror's fragments, now purified, and a shield forged from an ancient silverwood tree. None now existed whole save the staff. The shield had been lost when Duke Reed's forces razed the old silverwood grove decades ago. Without it, the Guardian's woken fury could not be quelled. How can we find the shield? Lena asked, tone urgent. If it's lost, the Guardian won't be bound. Jared's pale eyes glowed faintly. Go to the roots of the silverwood grove, now buried beneath the ridge of echoes. There, rune-etched stones mark the site. The shield lies encased in soil, waiting for those who will unearth it with honor, not greed. Marcus frowned. The ridge of echoes lies across the Frosthold Pass. Only the most reckless adventurers dare cross such treacherous ground. He glanced at Lena, then at Elias. And by nightfall, we ride together. Elias nodded gravely. We have little time. The ground tremors of spring thaw weaken the wards nightly. The Guardian's stirring grows stronger. Reinhold rose, voice resolute. Then let this night mark the forging of a new alliance, town, temple, and travelers united. We shall prepare for midnight beneath the whispering willow. While candles burned low through dinner, whispers of the convergence rite spread like wildfire. Villagers helped prepare torches, gather silverwood slivers, and mark supplies. Lena, Orly, Marcus, and Elias held a private council by the hearth's embers. Marble-chipped runes glowed beneath Orly's lantern as she laid out a parchment map of the Ridge of Echoes. The old silverwood grove lies 3 days' ride across the pass, Orly said, voice tinged with urgency. In spring's thaw, the ridges are treacherous, hidden crevasses, avalanches, and lingering blizzards. Gather those willing to join, none may bear false intent. She slid the map to Lena, tracing the route. This path will lead you northward, then east over the ridge. Beneath the largest uprooted silverwood stump lies the iron-bound shield. Cover the shield in runes once found only in ancient Marrow writes words Father Elias can provide. Lena studied the map, determination sharpening her features. I will go at dawn with Marcus, Elias, and 2 of his acolytes. We ride fast, for the ridge's snow can shift overnight. She lifted her staff, its emerald gem now a steady glow of calm. When we return, the convergence rite will be performed beneath the willow. I can feel the roots tremble, as though awaiting the moment of binding. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. You carry the weight of many lives. Go, but be cautious. The guardian is proud, its power born from love of this land. We must not force it. Only through humility and respect may we find the shield. Marcus rested a hand on Lena's forearm. I ride with you, Lena. Whatever lies beyond the ridge, I'll stand by your side. His gaze held both promise and prayer. Night deepened, and the temple fell into silence. Outside, snow drifted in silent swirls, blanketing the world in white hush. Inside her chamber, Lena knelt by her bed, helping Marcus adjust his armor before dawn. He polished the steel of his bracers until they gleamed. At last, he paused, gazing at her with steady gray eyes softened by moonlight. Tomorrow, at sunrise, he said, we ride toward the unknown. Lena offered him a small, wistful smile. And return before nightfall. He leaned forward to brush a kiss on her forehead. Be safe. As he slipped from the room, Lena pressed her palms together, staff's emerald gem resting atop her folded hands, reciting a silent prayer for guidance. Snow-beat windows glimmered, and a single firefly darted past, as though offering its fleeting light as a blessing for the quest ahead. Before the first blush of dawn, Lena, Marcus, Elias, and 2 acolytes mounted their horses beneath a sky still embroidered with stars. The 4 riders emerged from the temple gates, their silhouettes poised against flickering torchlight at the entrance. An eager hush greeted them, a congregation of villagers standing in silent send-off, eyes bright with hope and fear. Harlan came forward, clutching a satchel of provisions, bread, cheese, small jars of honey, and vials of blessed water. For your journey, he said in a solemn voice. May the earth and sky guide you safely. Harlan, once a simple farmer, had become an unlikely hero who tended both cattle and community. Lena pressed a hand to his shoulder. We will carry Willowbrook's prayers with us. Then, with final nods and whispered benedictions from Orally and Brother Jarrett, the riders turned northward. Under a pale sky, the horses tramped through thawing fields, each hoof step sending slush skittering beneath. The frost-holed pass loomed ahead, distant white ridges flickering like phantom spires. Pines marched upward along rocky slopes, their limbs dripping with melting snow. As the sun rose, gilding the horizon, the travelers paused at a narrow ford where the river glinted icily. Remember, Elias said, sliding from his saddle to test the river's shallows with his staff, we must cross before midday. Warm currents will swell the river beyond these stones. He beckoned them across, and one by one they forded the icy water, frost-laden boots plopping onto opposite banks. Beyond the ford, the trail narrowed into a stony track that climbed steadily. Granite outcroppings appeared beside them, carved with runes older than the forest itself. Elias halted before one such boulder, fingers tracing ancient glyphs. These stones were placed by the Silverwood Wardens, who bound the first shield here. Their children once protected this path. He turned to Lena. These runes will guide you if you lose your way, so long as your heart remains true. Lena pressed her palm to the runes, feeling a pulse of warmth beneath her touch. I will not waver. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner and chillier. Icicles dripped from rocky ledges, and every breath felt as though she inhaled shards of glass. Marcus rode beside her, cape billowing, his eyes sharpened against the wind. How far remains? He shouted over the gusts. Elias gestured toward a narrow saddle between two crags. Beyond that ridge. Once we crest, we turn east. The Silverwood Grove's ruins lie at the pass's heart. The path wound through the saddle, where the wind roared like a mountain beast. Lena's horse snorted nervously as the edge dropped into a fog-wreathed valley below. Yet as they crested the ridge, the world widened. Beyond lay a hollow ringed by silvery aspens whose bark gleamed like moonlit glass. At its center, half buried beneath rubble and matted roots, stood the remains of a giant silverwood, its trunk hollowed and blackened, as though struck by lightning centuries ago. It is here, Elias breathed. He dismounted and set his staff into the snow. Stay on guard. The four approached the fallen trunk, careful not to slip on icy patches. Lena knelt beside a knot in the wood where her staff's emerald light glowed faintly. Above, a fresh layer of snow had sealed the stump. Kneeling, she traced a rune of warmth with her gloved palm. The frost parted, revealing a silver-bound shield, its rim engraved with the same twisted rose pattern as Elias's staff. As Lena lifted the shield, a ghostly whisper rose on the wind, a lament carried straight from the heart of the grove. She clutched the shield to her chest. The metal was ice cold, but beneath it, veins of emerald pulsed like life. I feel the abyss's spirit guiding it, she murmured. She is present here. Elias, Marcus, and the acolyte circled her protectively, but a sudden crack like thunder split the air. Snow dislodged from overhead branches, crashing, followed by a low, resonant growl. Dark shapes slid from the aspen grove's edge, frost-wrought wolves, 7 in all, their fur pale as new snow, eyes glowing with supernatural hunger. One bound toward Lena, jaws dripping with frost-crusted drool. Elias raised his staff, chanting a warding chant that sent radiant runes spiraling across the trees. The wolves' advance faltered, retreating to the grove's shadows. Lena, holding the shield aloft, focused on the faint warmth within the shield's core. She whispered the convergence invocation, words of binding taught by the abbess. As her breath froze into mist, the shield's emerald veins glowed brightly, sending a pulse of light across the hollow. The wolves yelped, backing away as trees themselves seemed to shudder. From within the grove, a spectral form emerged, the young shape of an abbess, wearing the very silverwood branches that once formed her cradle. Her eyes' soft pools of moonlight hovered between gratitude and sorrow. She raised her hand, chanting a single syllable that caused the wolves' snarling to fade. They trembled, then collapsed to the frost-glazed ground, faces peaceful as though freed from a primal spell. Lena knelt, feeling the abyss's spirit brush her cheek like a cool breeze. The spirit gestured toward the shield and Elias's staff, lighting emerald runes around them that entwined both artifacts. Lena added her shield prayer, by root and leaf, by iron and wood, we converge light and life beneath the willow's heart. The shield and staff's runes flared in unison, sending a wave of warmth rolling across the hollow melting frost, healing broken limbs of wolves, and dispelling lingering sorrow from the forest floor. The abyss's form faded, leaving behind a single silvery petal that drifted to Lena's palm. She closed her fingers around it, knowing that this petal would bind the guardian's gratitude to the land for generations to come. As dawn broke across the ridge of echoes, rose and gold bleeding skyward, Lena, Elias, Marcus, and the acolytes mounted their horses for the return journey. The shield hung at Lena's hip, its runic pulse attuned to her heartbeat. Elias strapped his staff to his saddle, its emerald glow now constant as life's first breath. They descended the ridge, hearts lightened by the abyss's blessing, even as shadows of uncertainty flickered at the forest's edges. The guardian beneath the willow awaited the convergence rite, and once complete, the whispering roots would hum with renewal, not sorrow. Yet as they rode toward Willowbrook, snow-dusted fields stretching below, hinting at spring's promise, Lena's mind turned to the future. The shield and staff must be reunited under the willow's boughs at midnight. Only then could the guardian's legacy live beyond death. And only then might Willowbrook truly flourish, its people bound by faith, courage, and the unbreakable bond between land and spirit. Twilight spilled across the valley like ink from a shattered vessel as Lena and her companions descended the ridge of echoes, silverwood shield secured tightly on her back. Though the sun dipped behind the horizon, an ethereal glow remained, cast not by moonlight, but by the twin artifacts now pulsing with ancient power, the emerald staff and the shield of the grove. They were no longer relics, they were keys. Keys to a rite long forgotten, one that would either soothe the guardian beneath the willow or awaken a wrath untouched by time. Willowbrook's torches flickered like fireflies as the riders approached. Townsfolk lined the village path once again, this time not in silence, but in awed anticipation. Word had traveled fast, as it always did where magic stirred. Some villagers carried offerings, dried flowers, bread, woven charms of straw and bone. Others clutched their children, whispering quiet prayers to the old gods, hoping for a spring without tragedy. As Lena dismounted before Whispering Willow Temple, Orally rushed to her side. Her silver hair was braided with ribbons of emerald silk, eyes wide with concern and wonder. "You found it," she breathed, fingertips brushing the runes etched into the shield's rim. "And something else clings to you, a presence." Lena nodded. "The abyss. She came to us in the grove. Not as a wraith or memory, but as a spirit of protection. She subdued the frost wolves with a single gesture and guided us to the place where the grove's heart once lived." Elias stepped forward, unslinging his staff. "She showed us the runes of binding. Tonight, when the moon reaches its apex, the rite of convergence must be performed. The guardian still stirs beneath the willow's roots, and now that these artifacts are joined, we have one chance to restore balance. Marcus, ever the soldier, had already begun preparations. He directed the town's militia to form a protective circle around the temple and the great willow tree. Beneath its branches, a ritual circle was traced in glowing salt, ash, and powdered silverwood bark. Symbols of unity: leaf, flame, river, and sky were etched into the soil with care. Every sigil pulsed softly, echoing the heartbeat of the earth. The villagers gathered in reverent silence, huddled beneath lanterns swaying on long poles. Lena stood at the center of the circle, clad in ceremonial robes stitched with root-like embroidery. The shield was strapped to her left arm, the staff gripped in her right. Brother Elias stood beside her, orally behind them both, whispering incantations to anchor the spiritual tether. Even Jared, the pale monk who had delivered the prophecy, knelt at the edge of the circle with palms upturned, humming in a tongue only the trees remembered. Then it began. A wind rose not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. Leaves rustled though the air was still. The great willow trembled, and a sound like weeping drifted from its roots. The crowd murmured. Children clutched their mothers. But Lena did not flinch. She raised the shield and staff, and with a voice stronger than even she expected, she called out. By root and bough, by shield and staff, I call thee forth, ancient one, bound spirit of the willow. Hearken to the will of the people, and rise not in wrath, but in remembrance. A rumble split the ground. The willow's bark split at the base, revealing a cavernous hollow glowing faintly green. From within, a shape began to emerge, not a beast, not a ghost, but something in between. A towering figure formed of wood and mist, with a face carved like bark and eyes as deep as wells. Its limbs flexed like branches swaying in a storm, and from its chest glowed the very heartwood of the first tree, the source of the ley line beneath them. The guardian had awoken. Its voice echoed in every heart present. Who calls me from slumber? Who bears the staff and the shield? Lena took a trembling step forward. I am Lena Harper, daughter of Willowbrook, acolyte of the temple, guardian of the grove's wool. We seek harmony with your roots, not war. The frost blood curse is broken. The staff is purified. The shield is found. Let the cycle renew. The guardian gazed at her, eyes narrowing. You bear courage. But what of intent? Others before you sought to bind me. Some with chain. Some with fire. Elias raised his hand. We do not come to bind. We come to listen. Then Lena dropped her weapons. With a breathless silence sweeping the crowd, she stepped into the circle unarmed. I offer no command, she said. Only a promise, to tend this land, as you once did. Let the rite begin. The guardian extended its hands. The staff and shield floated up, crossing in the air. The air shimmered. The salt circle blazed with light. Orally began chanting. Jared joined. Elias spoke the ancient tongue, weaving spell upon spell. And then Lena, her voice breaking but fierce, sang the rite's final line. From root to river, from leaf to light. May spirit rest, and land unite. A blinding flash burst forth, and in that instant, every villager saw a different vision, a grove in full bloom, children laughing under summer skies, rivers teeming with life, no hunger, no fear. Then silence. When Lena opened her eyes, the guardian was gone. The willow stood whole again, bark unbroken, branches strong. At its base, the staff and shield lay joined, now fused into a new artifact, the Verdant Sigil, humming with balanced magic. A single flower bloomed beneath it, a snowdrop, glowing with soft emerald light. Willowbrook erupted in cheers. Children danced. Elders wept. The land, at last, was free of the curse. But even as celebration began, orally whispered to Elias, "Did you feel it?" He nodded slowly. Yes. Something else woke, just for a moment. Beneath the ley line. Deeper than the guardian. Lena, unaware of their words, stood in the circle, wind tugging at her robes. She felt peace, yes, but also a faint vibration in the earth. A heartbeat too slow, too deep to belong to any tree. The story was not yet over. But for tonight, under the restored willow, peace reigned. The dawn after the convergence rite shimmered with a golden haze. Dew clung to the meadows like tiny stars, and birds sang from the willows with a joy that hadn't graced Willowbrook in generations. Children ran barefoot between the trees, unafraid. The river sang. The wind carried no whispers of dread. For the first time in years, the land breathed freely. And yet, beneath the surface where the roots of the verdant sigil pulsed, a deeper tremor stirred. Lena stood on the steps of the whispering willow temple, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The staff and shield had fused overnight into a single artifact, now cradled on a stone pedestal within the temple's sanctum. It no longer pulsed with magic, it thrummed, alive, like a heart. Orally had spent the night inscribing protective glyphs around it. Elias refused to leave its side. "I don't like the silence," Marcus murmured beside Lena. "It's too still. Like the land is holding its breath." Lena nodded. "I feel it too. Something deep and old is shifting." She paused, her voice tightening. And it didn't come from the guardian. Before Marcus could respond, a messenger burst through the temple gates, a young boy, mud-streaked and breathless. "Miss Lena." "Brother Elias." "Please, it's the river, there's something wrong." The villagers were already gathered at the northern edge of Willowbrook when the temple members arrived. The once crystal waters of the whispering river had turned a pale shade of green. Not vibrant, not healthy, but sickly, like moss left too long in shadow. Orally crouched near the banks and dipped her fingers into the water. She hissed and recoiled, small blisters forming on her skin. Poisoned, she whispered. But not by any natural cause. Marcus turned toward the hills. The source of the river lies beyond the ridge. If the waters are tainted, it means something is festering there. Elias spoke gravely. The right woke more than the guardian. When the ley line surged through the verdant sigil, something ancient was shaken loose. Lena felt the pull again, a vibration beneath her feet. She touched her chest, where the silver petal the abyss had gifted her still hung by a thin cord. It pulsed faintly, as though responding to a call. "We need to go back," she said firmly. "To the grove. The roots of that curse didn't die last night, they just retreated." By nightfall, Lena, Marcus, Orally, and Elias once more rode northward, this time joined by two new figures, Kale, a flame-wielding herbalist from the southern hills, and Naira, a reclusive tracker, who claimed to speak with the winds. Neither were temple members, but both had felt the shift in the land and volunteered without hesitation. Kale's demeanor was curt but confident, his fingers always faintly singed with glowing embers. "Whatever foulness stirred your river, it's not natural rot. It's seeping upwards, leaching out, as if drawn by something." Naira, on the other hand, was quiet, eyes always skyward, listening. The winds above the ridge whisper of a gate. One that was never meant to open. They traveled in silence through the night, the forest eerily quiet around them. When they arrived at the ruins of the Silverwood Grove, the moon hovered like a sentinel above the broken stump. But the grove was no longer dormant. Vines writhed around the roots of the ancient trees. The ground was warm, unnaturally so. A faint glow seeped from the cracks in the earth. Orally knelt, touching the soil, then drew back, pale-faced. "It's inverted. The ley line's energy is flowing upward but not into the world. Something is feeding on it." Kale raised his hand, a flickering ball of flame forming in his palm. "Then we smoke it out." "Wait," Lena said sharply. "We don't know what we're dealing with. This isn't the Guardian. It's deeper. Darker." The ground trembled. And then, with a sound like stone grating against bone, a fissure cracked open beneath the grove. Green mist poured forth, thick and noxious. And from the chasm rose a figure cloaked in rot and shadow, half human, half root, with hollow eyes that glowed like dying stars. It spoke in a voice like splintering bark, "You awaken peace, but forget the cost. I am the root you severed. The hunger left behind. I am Thornshade, the echo below." Elias raised his staff, but it pulsed dimly. "Thornshade, the Guardian's buried twin. I thought you were just a myth." Thornshade snarled. "The myth lives. I was sealed beneath the willow when balance failed. Forgotten. Fed only by broken promises and cursed soil. And now. Now you stir me awake. Lena stepped forward, heart racing. We came to heal the land, not destroy you. Let us. Lies, Thornshade spat. You performed the rite. You sealed my brother in light. But where did the shadow go, girl? Into me. The air grew thick with decay. Vines snaked toward the party, lashing like whips. Kale unleashed a wall of flame to hold them back, while Nairo whispered to the winds, summoning a gust that cleared the mist for seconds at a time. We can't defeat him here, Orally cried. This is his domain. Then we draw him out, Lena shouted, raising the petal of the abyss high. It pulsed with light, and Thornshade recoiled. Bring the sigil, Elias ordered. Back to the willow. If light sealed him once, it may again. With the petal glowing as their guide, the party fled the grove, Thornshade's laughter echoing behind them like a broken melody. Back in Willowbrook, panic spread fast. The villagers saw the sky shift, clouds turning a sickly green, winds moaning through the trees. But Lena and her companions arrived swiftly, the verdant sigil now placed upon a ceremonial altar beneath the willow. The sigil must awaken fully, Elias said. But we need a conduit, something that bridges both light and dark. I'll do it, Lena said. Marcus grabbed her arm. No. You saw what happened at the grove. He'll destroy you. He won't, Lena said quietly. Because I carry both. The Abyss's blessing, and Thornshade's mark. She lifted her sleeve. Along her forearm, a faint black vein pulsed, a remnant from the grove. I felt it. He touched me. Silence fell. Elias swallowed hard. Then you are the bridge. But you must be careful. Let him see you, not as an enemy but as reflection. Lena stepped into the circle once more. This time, the sigil responded. Green and gold light spiraled upward, coiling into the branches. The willow glowed. From its roots, the guardian's voice whispered, he is part of me. And I of him. Complete the circle. Thornshade rose from the earth again, this time within the village bounds. Villagers screamed, but he paused, glaring at Lena. You stand between dark and light. She raised the sigil. Not between. I am both. And I choose balance. She stepped forward and pressed the sigil into the earth. A shockwave burst outward. Thornshade roared, not in anger, but agony, and something more, release. Shadows poured from his form, curling like smoke into the roots of the willow. Where they touched bark, flowers bloomed, petals black at the tips, but glowing at the core. Lena collapsed. When she awoke, it was dawn again. The air smelled of mint and honey. The curse was gone. And Willowbrook, for the first time in centuries, was truly whole. The spring that followed Thornjade's vanishing was unlike any in memory. Willowbrook bloomed in ways once thought lost to time. Bluebell meadows returned, birds long extinct sang again, and the wind carried the scent of old forests reborn. But peace, Lena had come to understand, was never permanent. It was only the space between questions. She could no longer sleep. Each night, she dreamed of a forest not found on any map. Trees whose bark shimmered like bronze, with branches that bent unnaturally toward the stars. A temple at their center, sunken into the roots like a crown lost to earth. Voices whispered in a forgotten tongue, "Return the promise." Then a name, Violrin. She awoke each time with the taste of ash in her mouth and the scent of sandalwood on her fingers. Elias took the dream seriously. "The name Violrin predates even the first leyline records," he said, poring over scrolls in the temple archive. "Some call it a sanctuary. Others, a prison." Orally, ever in tune with the lay, placed a hand over Lena's. "Whatever it is, it's calling you. And you're changing, Lena." She was. Since the rite, her presence made plants bend toward her. Moss grew beneath her feet. Ravens followed her when she rode. She had become more than guardian, she was becoming anchor. One evening, Naira returned from a week-long scout into the deep woods bearing a carved stone disc etched with twisted root sigils. "I found it buried beneath a dead tree, untouched by decay," she said, voice taut with dread. "It pulses like it's breathing." Kale examined it, eyes narrowing. "This is a seal. A ward. And it's broken." That night, Lena sat beneath the verdant willow. The sigil was fused into the altar now permanently. But when she laid her hand on it, she felt a surge unlike before, not just memory, but invitation. She whispered, "Violrin." And the ground cracked. The next day, a scouting party assembled. Lena, Orally, Elias, Kale, Naira, and a newcomer, Brother Ashen, a gaunt scholar from the outer cloisters who had spent decades chronicling lost rites and forbidden places. Violrin, he explained as they rode, was once the seat of the Hollow Court, the council of spirits and mortals who negotiated balance between this world and the next. When that balance was broken, the court vanished. Or so we thought. They passed into a region untouched by map or myth. As they crossed the Thistle-Verge plain where the wind howled backward, Elias grew weak, and Kale's fire sputtered unnaturally. Something here rejected them. It took 2 days to reach the forest of Lena's dreams. The trees were exactly as she saw, bronze bark, bone-pale leaves. Even the moon above seemed dimmer, like filtered through frost. In the center stood a temple not made of stone, but living wood, its spires spiraled upward like antlers. The doors were ajar. Inside, silence reigned. Then a voice spoke, not aloud, but within each of their minds, "Child of the Sigil, you return too soon." A figure stepped from shadow. Neither man nor spirit, it wore antlers of ash and eyes like molten silver. Its form shifted with each blink: tree, flame, bone, storm. "I am Verdant, the Hollow Regent," it said. "Last of the court, guardian of the rift between." Lena stepped forward. "I was called." "You were chosen," Verdant corrected, "the moment you bound Thornshade to root instead of banishing him. That act made you more than mortal. You are resonant." Lena blinked. "What does that mean?" Verdant gestured. The temple walls rippled like water. Visions spilled forth, wars between forest and flame, guardians fractured into rage and sorrow, a line of anchors, chosen ones like Lena, each tasked to hold the lay steady when imbalance threatened. "They all failed," orally whispered. "Because they chose power," Verdant said. "Not harmony. You are the first to choose both." Elias stepped forward. "Why bring us here? What awaits?" Verdant's gaze darkened. A tear has opened. A fault line between spirit and void. Thornshade was but the first echo. The hollow rift yawns wide now, hungry. And Vielrin must awaken to seal it once more. "But you just said the court failed," Kale said. "What makes this time different?" Verdant turned to Lena. "Because the court no longer decides. She does." And with a sweep of his hand, vines rose from the floor, binding everyone in place except Lena. "You must choose now," Verdant intoned, "which echoes to carry and which to sever. Step into the hollow rift. Face what lies beneath memory." The floor opened beneath her. Lena fell. She landed not with pain but with stillness. An endless expanse of roots and mirrors surrounded her. Each mirror showed a version of herself, as a priestess, a tyrant, a mother, a wanderer. Some bore scars. Some wore crowns. Some were dead. In the center stood a single door. It bore no handle, only a keyhole shaped like the verdant sigil. From her chest, the silver petal unfastened itself and drifted to the door, glowing. Lena stepped through and saw herself, but older. Eyes wild. Skin lined with bark. The other Lena looked up and spoke in a voice like wind through stone, "If you seal the rift, you seal yourself. The world forgets your name, your face, your story. You become the anchor. Eternal. Silent." Lena's throat tightened. "Then so be it." She stepped forward. But the older version raised a hand. There is another way. Share the weight. Split the memory. Let others carry echoes of you. Be not anchor, but weaver. The verdant sigil shimmered between them. Lena reached out and awoke. She was lying at the heart of the Vielrin temple, the sigil floating above her. Around her, Elias and the others stirred, freed from the vines. Verdant knelt before her not as a regent, but as a shadow of himself. You chose harmony. Lena stood. I choose the many. The court returns not as rulers, but as reflections. Let each village, each soul, carry a fragment. No more anchors alone. Verdant bowed. Then so it shall be. The temple pulsed once. And all across the continent, forgotten groves blossomed. In far-off mountains, rivers once dry began to flow. And in Willowbrook, the great willow bore fruit golden and glimmering with memory. The hollow court had returned. But not as before. This time, it lived in every hand that tilled the soil, in every song sung by the hearth, in every whisper beneath the leaves. And in Lena, who now bore no title, no temple, only truth. It began with a raven. Not the usual kind, the large, proud birds that had followed Lena since her awakening, but a smaller one, barely feathered, with eyes the color of frost-bitten steel. It landed at her window in the whispering temple and refused to leave. Kale noticed it first. That's no ordinary bird, he murmured. It carries something, an imprint. Elias nodded grimly. I've seen this once before, in the records of the old orders. That species is extinct, or should be. It's from the ashlands. At the word, Orly's face paled. You mean Thurnbull? Silence. Naira's voice, quiet and tight, broke it. Thurnbull was sealed 1,000 years ago. A kingdom that chose corruption over harmony. When the lay turned against it, the court exiled the entire land into a fold of time. Lena stepped closer to the raven. Then why is it reaching out now? The bird opened its beak and whispered in a dry, broken voice. Vielrin is not the only gate. The expedition began the next day. Lena, Orly, Kale, Naira, and Elias were joined by Oran, a blind cartographer whose maps had once charted ley anomalies across the continent. He claimed to possess a scroll that showed the path to Thurnbull, not the ashlands themselves, but the threshold where its seal thinned. They journeyed north, past the sleeping ridges of Grenthal, through forests where trees grew in spirals and wind whispered backwards. The further they traveled, the more unnatural the world became. Lena felt it in her bones, something was watching, not with hunger, but with memory. 3 days in, they arrived at the Bleeding Stone, a monolith shaped like a claw piercing the earth. According to Oran, it marked the edge of the old seal. As Lena approached, the verdant sigil pulsed against her chest. A single word burned in her thoughts. Enter. Oron unfurled the scroll. Its runes shimmered, rearranging into a circular pattern agate of roots and bone. As the party formed the circle, Lena stepped into the center and whispered the phrase from her dreams. I bind not to close, but to see. The world bent. And Thurnbull returned. The sky above was grey not from clouds, but from ash suspended in the air like memory. Buildings of black stone lay half buried beneath hills of cinders. Roads were cracked but intact, leading to towers crowned with rusted antlers. No birds. No wind. Only silence. This place, orally murmured. It's waiting. They passed what had once been a garden now twisted, thorned, its trees bearing fruit shaped like eyes. Naira flinched as she touched one. These aren't illusions. They're memories. Preserved. Kale lit a flame in his hand, but it burned blue instead of red. The lay here is reversed. As they reached the city's heart, a cathedral sunken into the earth, Elias pointed toward a massive statue, split in two. It depicted two figures. One was clearly Verdant, antlers tall, and arms outstretched. The other. Lena, Kale said, stunned. And he was right. The second figure bore her face, but twisted. Bark over one eye. A crown of dying leaves. And in her hand the sigil, cracked. Before anyone could speak, the ground shook. A shadow spilled from the cathedral, thick as tar, shaped like a robed figure without a face. It spoke. You returned. At last. Elias raised his staff. What are you? I am what was promised, the figure said. What was exiled? You bear her face, yet you walk with the living. You should have stayed in Vielrin. Lena stepped forward. Who are you? The shadow peeled back, revealing a woman of bark and ember, half burnt, half alive. Her voice was like smoke. I am Sarah, first weaver. The one who chose flame when balance demanded silence. They sealed me in Thurnbull. But I remember. Lena gasped. The weaver, the one who betrayed the court. Sarah nodded. And now you carry the sigil. Do you think it makes you whole? I don't seek wholeness, Lena replied. Only harmony. Then witness discord. With a cry, Sarah flung her arms wide and the cathedral behind her erupted in lightless flame. From the depths, shadows rose, wraiths of past anchors, their faces twisted in anguish. Each bore a shard of a broken sigil. The group fought desperately. Kale's flames flared blue and wild, but they could not burn memory. Naira's arrows passed through the wraiths, finding no anchor. Elias chanted a binding spell, only to be thrown back by a wave of raw grief. It was Orally who realized the truth. "They're not attacking us," she cried. "They're echoes. Fractured parts of Lena's legacy." Lena stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "I see you. I remember." One by one, she called the names of the past anchors, names she had read in Vielrin, names the world had forgotten. Each time, a wraith dissolved into light. Only Sereth remained. "You carry their pain," she whispered. "But you won't survive mine." And she struck. Lena raised the sigil, and this time, it did not shield. It opened. The light that poured from it was not fire, nor sun, nor star, but life. The wind returned. Ash lifted from the ground and spun into spirals. Trees outside the city began to green. Water surged from broken wells. Sereth screamed. But even as her body burned, her voice softened. "I only wanted to be remembered." Lena held her hand. "I will remember." And Sereth vanished. The city of Thurnville remained part ruin, part echo. But it no longer whispered hunger. Its skies lightened. Its roads were quiet. And its statues, now whole, bore both names. Verdant. Sereth. Balance. The party returned to Willowbrook weeks later, changed. Lena said little. But each morning, she sat beneath the willow and spoke names no one else remembered. Yet somehow, the land always listened. And in the shadows of the mountains, another gate stirred. But that's a story for another time. It began with silence. Not the comforting silence of Willowbrook at dusk. Not the peaceful hush of a temple at prayer. This silence was wrong, a silence so total that even thought seemed muffled. Lena woke in her chamber to find the birds gone. No rustling leaves, no murmuring streams. The air felt hollow, as if something had taken the world's voice. Kale burst into the room, his flame flickering oddly in his palm. "It's happening," he growled. "The lay is thinning. Again." Nyra arrived next, breathless. "The winds from the east, they've stopped. Nothing moves beyond the Frostpine Hills." Elias appeared last, bearing a scroll older than any they had seen. "It's him," he said simply. "The one before the court. The one they never dared name. He was not sealed by light, or flame, or wool. He was sealed by forgetting." Orly's hands trembled. "The Hollow King." The scroll spoke of a king who had once ruled over a continent not with armies or spells but with absence. His gift and his curse was the ability to erase things from the fabric of the lay itself. He unmade names, Elias explained. Removed rivers from maps. Took words from languages. And when the world had almost forgotten itself, the anchors of the time bound him with a final sacrifice by forgetting him in return. But something had changed. The echoes of Seraph. Her memory called out, Lena whispered. And in remembering her, we stirred something deeper. Indeed, the land responded. Maps changed. Old ruins reappeared. Forgotten valleys now held mist-choked cities. And in the east, beneath a sky that flickered like torn parchment, a black spire had risen. His throne, Oran whispered when they found it on the edge of a newly revealed chasm. Not built. Remembered. They journeyed through the newly emerged land Velthar, the unspoken kingdom. As they crossed into its borders, Lena began to feel lightheaded. Words failed her tongue. Objects became harder to name. Trees became those things with bark, birds those flying beings. The further they went, the less of themselves they retained. Orally forgot her name. Kale forgot how to summon fire. Even Elias struggled to recall the spell for light. Only Lena held on but barely. And then they reached the nameless gate. It stood not in stone, but in void, an arch of negative space, guarded by sentinels made of pure silence. Each one held a broken instrument, a harp with no strings, a flute with no holes, a bell with no clapper. Naira whispered, "They are memory wardens. Once music makers. Now guardians of silence." Lena stepped forward and drew the verdant sigil. It flickered dim, hesitant. She whispered her own name aloud, Lena. The gate shivered. The silence cracked. And the world behind it opened. The throne room of the Hollow King was vast and blank. Not empty. Not ruined. Just absent. There were no walls, but they felt enclosed. No floor, but they did not fall. And on the throne, made not of wood or stone but forgetting itself, sat a figure with no face. It spoke not in words but in gaps. In missing syllables, in broken rhythms. And yet Lena understood. You brought memory. To a world that chose peace through forgetting. You bound Thornshade. You healed Seraph. You restored Vielrin. Now you must undo. She stepped forward. I won't. The world deserves to remember. Even pain. Even betrayal. The Hollow King rose. With each step he took, something vanished. First, Kale collapsed forgotten by the fire he once commanded. Then Naira, her bow turned to mist. Even Elias fell, his staff crumbling into nothingness. Lena cried out. Stop. The king's face turned toward her, a mask of nothing. And then she felt it, her own memories slipping. Her childhood. Her mother's voice. The first time she touched the sigil. gone. But then, she heard another voice. A song. It was Orally, the girl with no name, singing. A tune without lyrics, only feeling. A tune from violin. The sigil began to glow. Orally sang louder. And Lena remembered. She remembered Saratha's final words. She remembered Thornshade's sorrow. She remembered Varatha's plea. And she remembered herself. With one final breath, she thrust the sigil into the Hollow King's chest. And spoke not a name but a story. Her story. And the Hollow King screamed for the first time, not in anger, but in recognition. The throne shattered. The void crumbled. Light returned not bright, but gentle. Restorative. Kale stirred. Naira blinked. Elias wept. Orally smiled and finally spoke. I remember now. Lena helped her up. Outside, Velthar was no longer ash and absence but fertile soil and faint song. They had not defeated the Hollow King. They had remembered him. And in doing so, robbed him of power. Back in Willowbrook, the seasons began to flow naturally again. Children sang tunes with no known origins. The river whispered old names. And Lena, once an orphan girl in a quiet village, now held a role far beyond any anchor or weaver. She was the Lorekeeper. The last guardian not of power but of truth. And truth, as she now knew, could never be silenced again. The world was quiet now. Too quiet. Willowbrook had healed. The rivers ran clear, the stars sang again in the night sky, and even the air seemed to hum with contentment. But Lena could not rest. For in every reflection on water, on glass, in the polished blade of Kale's sword she saw her. The girl with her eyes, her voice, her sorrow. The mirror-born. The being that had slipped into existence the moment Lena chose to remember everything. It was her every regret, every fear, every doubt Lena had tried to bury. And now, she was walking. Breathing. Becoming. Elias called it a shadow of consciousness. Kale said it was just a phantom. But Orally, quiet and wise, knew the truth. She's not your enemy, she whispered. She's your echo. But echoes, left uncontained, grow louder. And this one wanted to rewrite. It began with missing faces. The baker forgot his son's name. The temple bells rang at the wrong hour. The great verdant willow lost a branch, then two. The mirror-born wasn't attacking. She was rewriting. Not with violence, but with subtle erasure. She smiled, gently, as people forgot why they smiled. Lena confronted her in the ruined grove beyond Violrin where Thornshade had first fallen. You can't keep doing this, Lena said. Her echo tilted her head. I'm not doing. I'm undoing what should never have been remembered. You're me, Lena whispered. No. I'm the part of you that understands pain is poison. That harmony can only come when the scars fade. But they teach us. They trap us. And then, the mirror-born offered her hand. One touch, and we can forget. All of it. The battles. The burdens. The names. You and I just Lena again. No sigil. No weight. Just peace. Lena hesitated. The wind held its breath. And then she took her own hand. But instead of surrendering, she embraced her. And whispered, "Thank you, but no." The mirror-born's eyes widened. And then tears fell. You, forgive me. I forgive myself. The sigil flared. For the final time. The world didn't end. It simply settled. The mirror-born dissolved not into ash, but into light. Into memory. Into truth. And as she vanished, Lena felt a peace deeper than any silence. Not the absence of pain, but the fullness of meaning. The sigil, now whole and silent, turned to dust in her palm. Its purpose fulfilled. The ley lines no longer needed a guardian. They had become the people. And Lena, she vanished from history. Not as punishment. As choice. Years passed. Children in Willowbrook grew up hearing stories of a girl who could speak to trees, who battled darkness with memory, who healed the world with song. But they didn't know her name. Only her legacy. The rivers sang her melody. The stars echoed her dreams. And deep in the verdant grove, a new tree grew. Silver-leafed. Rooted in silence. Bearing fruit shaped like teardrops. Some said that if you ate one, you'd remember something you never knew you'd forgotten. A name. A smile. A whisper beneath the wind. And sometimes, when the moon was full, you could almost hear a voice in the breeze, saying, "Remember." Clapperboard YouTube video title. The Lorekeeper's Last Echo, final chapter of the Verdant Sigil Saga. Memo YouTube description. In this epic final chapter of the Verdant Sigil Saga, Lena confronts the darkest reflection of herself, the Mirror-born, a being born from her own fears, doubts, and forgotten regrets. As the fabric of memory begins to unravel across the land, Lena must make the ultimate choice: erase the pain of the past, or embrace the full truth of who she is. From forgotten kingdoms and shattered thrones to living temples and sentient shadows, this finale weaves together all threads of the journey: Thornjade's fall, Saratha's redemption, the Hollow King's return, and the healing of Vielrin. With over 13 chapters of fantasy storytelling, emotion, and mythic trials, this saga concludes with a heartfelt lesson. True peace isn't found in forgetting, but in remembering with grace. Herb Sparkles dive into a story where memory is magic, and the soul's echo shapes the world.